Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Ті, хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, та вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Platforms such as UA Weapons and Jomini W on Twitter and the Enforcer channel allowed people around the world to follow the war in a depth and a way that had never happened before. Retired General David Petraeus.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Наші
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 713 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And today we've got some very big news. Ukraine encircles the Russian army. Let's go.
And of course, we are going to be covering the past 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine and the major developments that we've been seeing, not just in Ukraine, but abroad as well in other countries such as the Russian Federation itself. There's been a lot going on over the past 48 hours, and I think it would be best to bring y'all directly into our first major news of the night, that according to the information we have gotten on this channel, Ukrainian armed forces have been able to successfully cut off Russian forces in the southern end of the city of Avdiivka, trapping, from what we know, at least over 1,000 Russian soldiers in a pocket. I'll be taking y'all to the map that we have right here, and I do not believe the Deep State UA has corrected this map yet, and they have not. But from what we've heard, Ukrainian forces have currently moved into this area where the mouse cursor is right here, completely cutting off the Russian forces that were inside of this area of houses within southern Avdiivka. This area serves as the only area that Russian forces have actually been able to make it into the urban residential areas of the city of Avdiivka. This has been a major development throughout the course of the battle, because the possibility of Russian forces using this as a jumping point to fight further and deeper into the city has been a serious concern. At the exact same time as this pocket formed, Ukrainians were immediately trying to figure out a way to close off this finger and create a complete encirclement. An encirclement would be very important for the Ukrainians to achieve a few days ago, as encircling this force will ensure that no supplies are able to make it to them, and their position is incredibly precarious, if not completely untenable. Through that untenable position, Ukrainians will be able to knock out a large amount of the Russian fighting forces that are in the southern part of Avdiivka, and not only that, probably take on a high amount of Russian prisoners of war. Today, we got information that apparently forces of the 110th Brigade have been able to push forward, although we've started to hear reports that the 110th Brigade may be reaching battle exhaustion at this point. They did muster their final bits of strength to move directly south of this finger and cut it off. The map has not been updated at the moment, but we have been able to get enough reports from Ukrainian forces on the ground that are able to confirm that this is now a complete encirclement of around a battalion tactical group or an even larger sized force of the Russian army within this pocket. We were also able to get a video, which I'll be taking from here because this is actually a video from the southern finger in the city, where Russian prisoners were being captured by advancing Ukrainian forces on the southern end of the encirclement. Here's the clip. We can see a couple of Russians laying on the ground here that the Ukrainians have taken prisoner.
Медленно. Я тебе не братан, сука.
He's remarkably calm to be dealing with him.
Хорошо, я
Yeah,
сейчас
he's pretty
открываю,
calm, actually.
помогаю тебе достать документы. Если ты, сука, рыпнешься, я тебя ебашу. Ты понял? Мы договорились? Договорились. Вот еще один. Четвертый. Сильно контуженный. Будем сейчас его эвакуировать.
Вылазь, блядь. Выходи сюда, мы за тобой туда не
Это
полезем.
Макс. А это я. Заебанный, просто пизда, вы не понимаете, как это. Авдеевка, блядь.
Вась, нахуй. Ложи, блядь.
На меня ползи. Вторая, сука. Сюда ползи.
Also, really quickly, everyone, sadly, I actually put in that poll right there, and I was trying to put it in really quickly. There was a typo there. It's actually saying, "Will Ukraine is Ukraine going to gain control of the city of Avdiivka?" I actually meant to put, "Is Ukraine going to continue to hold the city of Avdiivka?" Because right now the Ukrainians are currently in possession of it. So really quickly, I'm actually going to take that poll down and throw up a new one. So everyone, just hang tight real quick. Sorry, that was a complete typo on my end. But let me go put up the correct typing. I was completely distracted trying to get the clip up at the same time. But is Ukraine going to continue to hold the city of Avdiivka? Sorry, y'all, because Enforcer Matt always has a line of polls that he has for himself. That was actually one that it was my poll that I put in tonight on my own, so it was a complete typo. Enforcer Matt's way better at doing polls than I am. But really quickly, yes, the city will hold is the first option. Maybe it depends if the Russians, if the attacks stop. Oh, depends on.
Also, in the
attack.
meantime, folks, if you have a question for us, feel free to tag at Enforcer Matt and put your question behind it. Because right now I only have one, so I'm in need of some questions.
All right, and so really quickly, let me throw that poll right back up. Sorry about that, everyone. Once again, a little bit of a typo there. But moving on from that, we can see the Ukrainians continuing to process their Russian prisoners here in the clip.
Есть с тобой? Руки по бокам. Морды в пол. Руки по бокам.
We see him having him stretch his arms out wide.
Третий. Там четвертый. Блять, пиздец. Слушай меня. Слушай, я задаю вопрос, от тебя только, сука, ответ. Понял?
See him
Ползи на
talking to
бронь.
another one of the Russian prisoners here. And we could see that in this encirclement, they were able to capture a decent amount of Russian forces, and from what we also understand, they were able to wipe out an equally large amount as well. Nevertheless, this encirclement in the southern part of the city is certainly going to be posing some massive obstacles for something that has been happening in the northern part of Avdiivka up until today. Over the past 24 hours that we've been able to get here on the battle report, it does appear that the Russians are continuing their attempt to push into the northern part of Avdiivka and try and cut off the quote-unquote road of life leading into the city of Avdiivka. The Road of Life is a small road that goes from the Ukrainian lines and directly into the city of Avdiivka itself. Much like the Road of Life for the city of Bakhmut, the Road of Life in Avdiivka continues to provide a major supply corridor and logistics route for Ukrainian forces to be able to know that they'll always be able to draw on supplies from their rear lines near the areas of Orlivka and Umanske. With the Russians closing in, and at this point only 800 meters away from the Road of Life, things have been getting a little bit strenuous in the northern part of the city on the defensive end, possibly even entertaining the idea that the Ukrainian forces may have to withdraw from the city of Avdiivka and begin to conduct a defensive battle of the Avdiivka coke plant and the surrounding villages to the northwest of the village, well, more so the city. At the moment, that has not coalesced, and from what we understand, the Russian offensive in that northern part may actually be delayed due to the encirclement of Russian forces in the south, which probably poses a very severe obstacle strategically for the Russian battle plan in this area, because now, from what we know, around 1,000 Russian soldiers have now been completely encircled in that pocket, and the Russians are probably going to consider that a high priority to try and break through the Ukrainian encirclement and try and relieve those forces, otherwise they will lose at least a battalion tactical group, if not more, in that encirclement. Beyond that, however, things have been continuing on the outskirts of Avdiivka as normal, with major battles occurring on both its eastern, western, and northern sides near the Krasnoarivka, Kamyanka, and Vodyane flanks. Moving on to our first clip to the eastern side, we did get to see that a Russian Ural was destroyed by a Ukrainian FPV today, as well as a D-30 artillery piece, as the smooth piano jazz plays. We can see our drone coming in here. And hitting the Ural 4320 right in the hood, taking it out.
Dang, and the drone went spastic for like a solid second.
Dude, the drone went, I was like, whoa, dang. But that Ural is also getting a little heated, Matthew. A lot like one of the interesting things that's about to be coming up a little bit later on tonight, which I'd highly suggest that y'all stick around for that, because I've seen that this has been something that's wildly, has been a wild topic of the night. And we can see here this FPV drone flying right into the breach of that D-30, hitting it and knocking it out on this pretty grainy drone footage, but still showing us the hit. And we see the FPV drone coming in right there and hitting the breach. And once again, knocking it out. And we can see right there that, of course, the Ukrainians are very happy that the equipment has been destroyed, and they are asking for continued support so that way they can continue to try and destroy Russian forces. But moving on from that little clip and into the northern area of Avdiivka, which is really the most important flank on the entirety of this battlefield right now, we can see that Ukrainian forces took a little bit of footage of the battlefield that's in the Stepove-Krasnoyarivka area. We hear the sounds of gunfire. We hear tracer fire and just really rifle rounds flying overhead. We now hear the sound of a T-80 rolling up onto the line somewhere. That high-pitched whine in the video is actually the sound of a T-80 tank moving up onto the line. And it seems as though it may have run over a mine. And we can see it's still moving over there. Also, really quick correction, I believe this may actually be filmed by the Russians. We didn't really know who filmed the video at the start, and I've tried to figure that out before the stream, and I couldn't, but I'm going to deduce that this is probably a Russian film of the Krasnoyarivka battlefield, considering that the Ukrainians don't really have a large number of T-80s in service at all, so the higher the chance that it's a Russian video that we're watching here. See the T-80 rolling up into the destroyed tree line. As an artillery round lands close nearby. We now see the T-80 firing on some position in front of the Russians.
Literally sounds like a jet pulled up to the scene.
Yeah, they're about to taxi to runway 25 right, clear for takeoff. We can hear the explosions continuing on in the background as the clip ends, but giving us a little bit of a context of what the Krasnoyarivka-Stepove battlefield looks like at the moment. Moving all the way down to the direction of Opitny, we also got to see a Russian BMP was destroyed in this area, along with two main battle tanks. Just a small mention there, but here's the clip. When you see our drone flying onto the field, we can see a knocked out BTR down there, I believe, and we can see the drone now flying back around in a circle to go for the... Oh, there's smoke grenades being discharged. Interesting. We've never really seen that much before. But now we can see another drone coming in on what appears to be a moving main battle tank. Or a... Yep, that is a moving main battle tank right there. Most likely a T-80 of some sort. A T-80BV, maybe. And we can see the drone trying to line up on a side shot here, but sadly only winding up getting a back shot. But nevertheless, it's good to see that the tank was knocked out. We can now see another one coming in to hit right on the rear of the engine bay, right under the turret, knocking out two tanks and one BTR from what I could see. But moving on from that, it is very good to see that the Ukrainians are continuing to try and conduct a very effective defense of the city of Avdiivka. And moving on to really one of our remaining clips in the city, we got to see that evacuations are continuing in Avdiivka as the battle is continuing to get even more hectic and a lot more involved for really both sides at this point.
Авдіївка, старе місто, вулиця Каштанова. Ось вона. Там, власне, вулиця Соборна. Приїхав на евакуацію. Сьогодні вночі розстріляли бабусю. Это вас сегодня ночью прилетело, да, во двор? Да.
And we see them
Я вас
coming in
очень
here
прошу,
to a
только,
grandmother's house
пожалуйста,
and getting her
просто,
out.
если не можете найти их, сделают, ничего страшного.
Все, Манюнечка, давай, давай, солнышко, надо, Маша, Маша, надо.
The cat's fighting.
They're fighting that cat like it's like a rabid animal.
Dude, and everyone sounds panicked. They're like, get in the cage. Look at this.
Все, Манюнечка, давай, давай, солнышко, надо, Маша, Маша, надо.
Призничай. Давайте задом.
They had to throw it in there like a sack of potatoes.
Не, это не тот.
Ты же хочет, пускай лезет. Мы его вывезем. Пускай сидит.
And now they're taking in random dogs. Random dogs are trying to get in the van now.
Вывезем хотя бы безопасно.
Jeez, man, that woman was about to kick him out too. That's not our dog. Get him out of here.
Тем более забираем. Так, уважаемые, машина стоит очень плохо. Что там? С этими документами. Вы собаку забираете? Да. Все, поехали. Все, выходим. Все, залазьте,
We see them throwing another dog in. It's just flinging the dog in, getting the lady in, and they're on the way out.
Ой, будет наказан тот, кто это сотворил.
Все, девочки.
Мама, ты просто не видишь этого ужаса. Тихо! Тихо!
Oh, it sounds like.
Oh no.
Sounds like the strays getting a little angry. Oh my god. Oh my lord. It's a sad video, but at the same time, the stray dog growling in the corner is, oh my god. I feel so.
That's one of those twisted moments where you're not really sure if you should laugh or not, but there's something going on that you can't help but laugh at.
Oh, it's probably better to laugh through this because it's of course emotionally straining. So I guess there's a little bit of a silver lining in the fact the cat was fighting to get in the cage and the dog is now growling at people. Oh, no.
Нет, это другая собака. Нет, это другая собака.
Ужас. Нет.
Господи, это мой город родной.
Да, нету Авдеевки просто.
Это мой родной город. Я тут родилась и выросла.
Man, that dog is going berserk.
Ой, мама, ты не видишь.
But man, it is tough.
Кошмар, как тут люди бедные жили. Мамочки, родные. За что нас так наказывать?
Все. Вот она сейчас у нас самая сложная будет дорога. Доставили в Покровськ дівчат.
Спасибо вам
Давайте,
большое.
да.
Дай Бог вам здоровья.
Да вам тоже.
И жизни.
Давайте.
But thank God, regardless of everything else that went on, they all made it out alive. That's really the most important part that matters. So I guess we can laugh at the end at the growling stray dog and also the cat not getting in the cage. But nevertheless, it is always tough to think because while it kind of cracked Matthew and me up to hear the growling dog in the back of the car, it is sad to think that these people and the stray dog had an owner at one point, most likely. And its owners, who knows what happened to the owners, who knows what happened to this family's house, but nevertheless, it's something to see that these people were able to make it out alive, and that's the most important thing that counts out of this whole ordeal. But beyond that, we're going to be moving on into our next bit of news, which is actually outside of Avdiivka. But before we get to that, I really want to quickly once again state that right now Avdiivka is holding, and from what we understand, the Ukrainians are conducting a very good defensive of the city. From what we understand, the Ukrainian kill-to-death ratio against Russian forces is somewhere in between 20 dead Russians for every 1 dead Ukrainian soldier, or it is as low as 12 dead Russians for every 1 dead Ukrainian. Regardless, it is a massively advantageous battle for the defenders, which are the Ukrainian armed forces. But some people have been bringing up the fact that the Russians have gotten within 800 meters of the road of life right here. And this may start to pose some serious threats to the future of the city. And Matthew, what in the world do you have to say about this? I know that you have an opinion on this in one shape or form.
So on the question of whether or not Ukraine is going to continue to hold the city of Avdiivka, it looks like the majority of people believe that the city will hold. And I'd have to agree with that perspective. I think it is going to hold. It is being encircled, of course, but I think it's going to hold. But it looks like only a few people said that Ukraine's going to lose the city, and a medium portion of people said it depends on the attacks. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would honestly have to say, I think that the city is probably going to have to depend on the attacks, because while the Ukrainian forces have been doing incredibly well, and nobody can understate the massive efficiency and in really the integrity of the Ukrainian armed forces in this battle, the Russians getting within 800 meters or less than a kilometer of one of the most vital roadways leading into the city is starting to become a little bit concerning, in my opinion. That may show that while the Ukrainians are doing incredibly good and they are conserving their manpower and their forces, they may not be able to hold the entirety of the city of Avdiivka itself. They may actually have to start moving towards the Avdiivka coke plant here in the future. But nevertheless, it is something that I think we're going to have to pay attention. Hopefully I am completely wrong and the Ukrainians can hold this city well. But of course, being pro-Ukrainian by having an unbiased battlefield analysis, this is something that is very similar to how the Battle of Bakhmut unfolded. Once the Russians made it close to the City of Life, or at least within a mile, things started to get pretty hairy for the Ukrainian defenders inside of the city of Bakhmut. And that seems that it may be a similar story down here in the Battle of Avdiivka, but hopefully I'm completely wrong and we'll be able to see this go a completely different way. But in the meantime, there's been a lot going on outside of the city of Avdiivka throughout the entirety of Ukraine, and not only that, within the Russian Federation. We got to hear that apparently some FPV drones were making their way into the Bryansk Oblast, and some Russians were apparently not too happy about that. I'm going to be showing you all this clip here because it is wild. It'd be wild. We hear the drone flying over. And we hear these Russians are not happy Russians.
Сбейте эту суку. О.
Ooh.
Пизда. Бомбанула сейчас.
A little boof. Oh.
Ебать. Тварь.
And that's the end of the clip, but not only did we hear the sound of the drone flying over, we got to hear its impact. We don't know what it hit. We haven't gotten any information on that. That actually occurred nearly 36 hours ago, and still no information has been forthcoming. So we'll be waiting to see how that's been going, what's developing in that regard, but still, it is some interesting news, but still more interesting news to come here in a moment. But I have to quickly take y'all up to the area of Lake Onega. Because Onega is a lake right beside Lake Ladoga. Lake Ladoga is actually quite famous, especially during the Winter War that the Soviet Union fought against Finland, because Finland is a pretty interesting country with a pretty interesting history, and Lake Ladoga served as one of the largest natural barriers or borders that the Finns had in their defense. But nevertheless, there is another lake right next door, Lake Onega. And Lake Onega had a little interesting sight happen at it today, because what we saw was apparently the burning remains, or at least what was floating, of the burning remains of an Mi-8 that ended up crashing within Lake Onega. Here's the clip. Well, you see a massive fireball coming off the lake. Actually, correction. I'm sorry. Really quick correction there. That is actually the searchlights of these hoverboats that are sitting around the lake looking for the crash of the Mi-8. That's the end of that clip, but showing us something fairly interesting. But we have something that is really interesting tonight, and something that has been bringing up a lot of controversy, not just in the Ukraine war sphere for the pro-Ukrainians, but also for the pro-Russians as well. Really, everyone that has been involved with Ukraine in any way, shape, or form in the world has been very opinionated on something that has happened over the past 48 hours that we were made privy to about 36 hours ago. And we've been seeing that it has been a complete firestorm for the rest of time since that has come out. Some of y'all will know that there is a certain American journalist or a media member that has traveled to the Russian Federation and apparently has interviewed Putin. Technically, this is one of the first times, well, actually, this is the first time ever that anyone from the West that is claiming to be a journalist, and also really quickly, I have to make a quick clarification of this for folks in the chat. no politics, because I'm not speaking about this on a political level, because I can already see some people trying to do that, and I absolutely just find that annoying. And also, another thing is that we're going to be speaking about this as though he is a journalist. I know many people are saying that he's not a journalist, but sadly in America, and really most of the world, there's no such thing as a press pass that makes you a journalist. All you have to do is say you are one, and technically you are a journalist at that point, much like we are on YouTube. Nobody has given us a license. There's no bar like there is for attorneys that gives you a license to be a journalist. This guy is technically a journalist here in the West, whether you like that or not. And apparently he has gone to the Russian Federation and has conducted an interview with Vladimir Putin. Now, this is something that has been very interesting, because we actually got a video, apparently, of this convoy leaving the Kremlin or some area nearby and making its way somewhere else. We know that we've actually seen this particular person at the Bolshoi Theater, which is in central Moscow, a little bit before this video was filmed. Pictures were actually taken of him there. But nevertheless, it has been massively controversial about why he is there, or whether it's going to be a good point for him to even try and interview Vladimir Putin. Is there going to be anything good that comes out of it, or is it going to be completely pointless? Or is there actually a lot to come out of it? Maybe for once, someone will actually go over there and put Putin on the hot seat and ask him questions that really will give us maybe some good insight or answers on what's going on in Russia. There has been a lot of different ways that people have been looking at this, but Matthew, how in the world are you looking at it? And most importantly, how is everyone else looking at it?
All right, so on the issue of Putin being interviewed for the first time by Western media since the Ukraine war started, which no matter how you feel about the situation, that is a feat in itself, because Putin has not agreed to speak to any Western media ever since he decided to isolate himself and become a hermit after launching the invasion. So I'm not very confident this is going to turn out in a good way necessarily, or we're going to get anything useful out of it. But it is I guess, historical event, you could say. But it looks like a good portion of people, the most actually, say it's totally pointless and unwarranted, while another handful says it depends on the interviewer, which that is a big deal in this factor right here. And a very small portion said it's a good intel opportunity. And in my opinion, I will be watching it. I'll be curious to see what is said. I don't think any hardball questions are going to be asked, because there's two reasons why that's not going to happen. First of all, the interviewer kind of has a bias. And number two, he is in Russia and he is at the mercy of the Russian government. And if he asks a question that doesn't go over too well, he could be arrested and also thrown into prison. And right now, considering the tensions between the U.S. and Russia, that guy would make a pretty juicy political target to put in the jail and then hold him for ransom or hostage. So it was kind of risky to do that. But at the same time, I don't think that he is an enemy to the Kremlin necessarily. He's got a bias. I'm trying to keep as neutral on this as possible, so that way I'm not trying to interject my own opinion on it. But he's a journalist because he calls himself one, but at the same time, I'm not getting my news from that guy. But Enforcer, what say you?
Now, I would have to agree on the last point, and really quickly, I have to say this. Technically, regardless whether you agree with the guy or not, he is a journalist. Now, whether or not he's a good journalist is another question. And in my honest opinion, I don't find him to be a good journalist at all. He honestly sucks at his job. Journalism isn't feeding a certain crowd of people exactly what they want to hear. It's really giving both sides of the story in a completely unbiased manner as best as you possibly can, and then telling it from that direction. That's really what the mark of a real good journalist is. And even then, we kind of skirt the line on this channel of journalism and not so much being a journalist, because we, of course, are pro-Ukrainian. We clearly have a bias. But at the same time, we try and be as unbiased as possible with the way we deliver the news on this channel about what's really going on. Even if it is to the benefit or detriment of Ukraine, we like to try and be as honest and open with y'all as possible. And we hope y'all enjoy that side of things here on the channel. But nevertheless, I would have to say that it greatly, the majority of y'all are largely right, but it has to go off of this idea, this decision. To me, it depends on the interviewer. And the interviewer clearly shows that they're not into trying to get good answers. I will say that I have taken a look, considering that he's been kind of big out there about this over the past 36 hours. I haven't really watched a lot of his stuff, but I went back and looked at some of his interviews with other prominent figures in the media lately, and I gotta say, I'm not really having high hopes for this Putin interview. I don't really think this is going to be going anywhere good because from what I can see in the past, here's what I'm seeing, okay? Let me just be entirely honest. People in the modern media, at least a lot of them in the mainstream modern media, Fox News, CNN, they all know the demographic of people that are watching, their political leanings, who they are, what they look like, their ages, everything about them they know. And they know that they need to target that specific demographic and have them watch their stuff. And so what they need to do is they need to say exactly what that group of people want to hear. This particular person has a very good idea, as a matter of fact, as to who his audience is and what he has to say and what he has to ask, or at least even lead people in, like, with leading questions to have specific answers come out that is going to make his viewer base watch his stuff and absolutely love him. So going off of that, and considering that I'm really basing this off of the interviewer, I'm not having really high hopes at all over what this is going to be. I have a feeling that I know what this is going to be. The interview is going to go something along the lines of this, with these kinds of questions. The guy is going to go, so you just invaded Ukraine because they were slaughtering babies? And Putin will go, well, yes, they're wicked, sick people. That's terrible. How come we've never heard about that in the West? Because they let you there. They don't want you to know. Wow, that's absolutely terrible. Well, I just got to tell you, the Russians are really the saviors of the earth. That's how this interview is probably going to go. Because looking at the other ones in the past, I mean, the questions are literally leading them to give a specific answer and to try and frame it a certain way. So I have a feeling that this particular interview would be totally pointless or unwarranted, because it's not like this particular person is going to be getting down to the bottom of things and asking the really good questions like, do you condone the Russian military using incendiaries on populated areas like the city of Bakhmut?
Yeah, definitely not.
You know, you're not going to get good questions like that from this particular journalist. This journalist, if anything, because really quickly, I'm going to say this. You are a journalist, whether you are unbiased or biased, really you are. But I think an unbiased journalist is what peak journalism is. This is more so going to be something along the lines of yellow journalism. It's going to be something that takes a little bit of truth, but they're going to embellish it greatly, and they're going to make sure that it guides one a certain way. But Matthew, while we're talking about this right now, I think it'd be great to ask everyone our next question, because it kind of, like, this question that we're talking about right now, this conversation we're having, really leads into the second one greatly. It's a very good question. But
yeah, and I'll be throwing that one up. But in the meantime, I want to make one more point. And I actually posted about this on Twitter earlier today, and it got a ton of engagement, like a ton, like probably the most of any post we posted, and probably for about a month. And my point in the post was that while I understand why people have a grievance with Carlson, because in my opinion, he's not that credible of a reporter. He clearly has a bias, and he's kind of leaned toward the entertainment side of things instead of the actual, non-biased credibility side of things. I understand why people don't like him, but at the same time, though, I don't understand why there's so much outrage about the interview, because nothing that's said in that interview is going to change anything in reality, except for sort of give us a clue as to what Putin is thinking at the moment. Because, everybody's pretty much got their minds made up on Ukraine. Either they support Ukraine at this point, or they don't, and they believe that no money should go towards Ukraine. So, in my opinion, the only thing this interview is going to do is basically give insight into Putin's current mindset, and even at that, it's going to be very skewed, because he's going to be trying to put forth a propaganda image of what he wants people to believe. So, one thing we don't want to do, though, is fall into the trap of trying to suppress speech or trying to put it down and not let it be aired, because if we do that, like I said on Twitter, it makes the pro-Ukraine people and us look like we're trying to hide something. And we have nothing to hide here, because if Putin is truly as evil as we always claim he is, then his lies should be easily disproven with basic facts. And I think that's the case in this situation. Whatever comes out in this interview with Tucker and also Putin, I think it can be disproven very easily. And I imagine we'll probably do that when it comes out eventually, because we'll have to address it, because there will probably be some pretty big headlines about it. But that's my take on the matter. And in the meantime, I'm going to put up that second poll.
And while Matthew is throwing out that second question to y'all, and we see what y'all are all thinking about this, I also have to throw in the fact that I'm seeing a lot of people saying the Russians have 100% to benefit from this, because he's going to give the Russians a massive audience, and they're all going to hear what he has to say, and whoop-de-doo, everyone becomes a pro-Russian overnight. I'm actually seeing that a lot, even right now, from what people are saying in our chat. And I would have to personally say that I disagree with that statement. And this is why I'm going to be asking you all this question. Well, we're actually going to both be asking you all this question here in a moment. And the question I have to ask y'all is, should this be allowed to happen? And before y'all even answer, I'm going to have to give a quick little bit of a speech of my own about this whole matter. I am, of course, pro-Ukrainian through and through. But I'm also pro-Ukrainian and anti-Russian for the specific fact that the Russians are the complete opposite of what the United States and this Western world is. This Western world, and the United States in particular, my own country, has been built on hundreds of years of ideas of free speech and liberty and personal freedoms of which you can find nowhere else in the world. There truly is no other sphere of influence, whether it be Russian or Chinese, that can match the concept of free speech that's here in the West. And I've always made it quite clear that while I disagree with people personally, and I would have to certainly say that I disagree greatly with the statements and ideas that are probably going to be coming out of this interview, although we haven't seen it yet, this is something I will have to say should be allowed. I'll say this. If the pro-Ukrainian stance is so weak that a single interview with the biggest liar in the world, who said that the war was going to be won in less than a week and is 2 years later, if a single interview with that guy apparently has enough power that it can hypnotize the entire public into immediately picking his side and going with that, then the Ukrainian side must be completely pointless. That would be my opinion. If the Ukrainian side has so much merits, and I do believe it does, that it will certainly weather just fine and will probably weather even better against this interview. This interview is going to be opening up the dialogue, really, in this country to strengthen pro-Ukrainian arguments, because you're going to be able to see probably every single lie that Putin is going to tell in this interview clearly for what it is. Hell, even on this channel, we probably have thousands of hours at this point of footage that will disprove literally everything that Putin is going to say. And doing that, and arguing against that directly in an interview that's probably going to be set up to make him look good, I think that's going to be something that certainly will help to make a lot of people pro-Ukrainian. Because you know something that a lot of people don't like is a liar lying directly to their face. That's one thing that many people do not like. And Putin is by far one of the biggest liars in the world. And I don't think that we should stop a liar from saying something. Because you know something that it looks like when we stop people from saying something? It looks like they're right. And it looks like they have a point. And we're scared to let them get that point out. So we're going to shut them down before they can even say it. And that's what that looks like in the end. It's better to let them have their moment, let them talk about whatever they want to talk about, and then blow it away with what we have to say and what we have as proof. That's what I think.
Also, another thing I see people saying in the chat is they don't think that the reasoning of people and also truth is going to prevail over the propaganda narrative. I don't think that's the case, because if you really think about it, why has Putin not agreed to do an interview with Western media up to this point? And I think that's a strategic move. He did not want to allow anyone in the West to be able to have anything they could directly disprove that came directly from his mouth about the situation in Ukraine, and now he has that. And I think he chose this individual journalist because he believed that he would give him the best chance to sort of shape it the way that Putin wanted to sort of paint the narrative. And until we see the interview, we won't know exactly how egregious the bias actually is. I have a feeling, like most of you, that's going to end up being extremely biased toward Putin's side. Mainly probably out of fear, because I'm sure the guy, even though he's not very good of a journalist in my opinion, he was probably in some pretty big fear actually standing and being inside of Russia. Because even though I don't like him, I will say I applaud the balls that he had to actually go to Moscow, because that was risky as an American in the middle of this war. Even if he is favorable to the Kremlin, that was risky in itself. But at the same time, that doesn't change my opinion about him, but you have to sort of recognize that in the process.
And I'm seeing a lot of comments in the chat saying the guy, the particular interviewer is stupid and idiot. But here's the thing: in America, we don't bar people from being able to do whatever they want because we think they're stupid and an idiot. Otherwise, probably 98% of people in the country wouldn't be able to do anything because they're stupid and idiots. That would be the reality of the matter. What is important is that we continue to preserve what the Western world is fighting over, because I'm seeing that as time goes on, a lot of people are forgetting the reason why we fight to survive. We fight to survive because we are who we are, and I don't think it's a great idea to stoop down to the Russians' level of trying to suppress people's speech, because I'll tell y'all something. In Russia, and I don't know, maybe some people can't see this, but in Russia, they're having this exact same discussion and this exact same mindset about shutting down people's speech, but it's people who are pro-Ukrainian. And they will put you in prison for 5 years minimum at this point if you are a pro-Ukrainian supporter. And you are public about that, and you make news stories about that. You will never see the light of day for the next 5 years at a minimum. When you think about that, and you think about taking that and switching it in the reverse, and instead of it being pro-Ukrainians that are shut down and imprisoned, it's pro-Russians, that means that we're really no better than the Russians in the end. We are becoming really as barbaric in a mindset as the Russians are, and then trying to find a way to excuse it. That's not what we should be about. In the Cold War, the United States, of course, kept a very big eye on communist parties, but we didn't openly ban them and shut them down in most countries in the West, especially in the United States. It's something, of course, some people are about to come up with a Red Scare, but over the rest of the Cold War, we didn't do that. It is important to make sure that this Western world stands by the values that we live for and are fighting for, such as ideas like free speech. If we can't stand by these ideas, at the end of the day, why are we even fighting against the Russians? We may as well join them if we are going to be as unenlightened as they are. I mean, it has been hundreds of years of the making where the West has evolved into being this liberal, ideal, free speech world where people are able to say whatever they want and actually have an open discourse about things outside of the fear of being arrested by the government or even shut down through official government-sanctioned actions. That's not a smart idea to do, and I personally think that if we were to start moving down that route, we're going down the exact same times that we look back as dark times here in the West. Times like the Red Scare and McCarthyism, the Salem witch trials, the Puritan takeover, and the creation of the Commonwealth in Britain. We're looking at pretty dark times indeed for us, and I think that it's always important to remember that while the Russians are barbarians, it should be quite easy for the pro-Ukrainian side, such as this channel, to easily take the comments, whatever there is going to be said, and shoot them down as quickly as they arise, very calmly, very rationally, and with good facts and information. We have an endless amount. We've been doing this for 2 years. It's not really like anyone can quickly pull the wool over everyone's eyes and go, oh, look, everything you've seen is a lie. Don't believe what you see, believe what I say. That's something that I'd certainly have to say will be the case. And I see some people saying, can we stop talking about politics? I don't really know how the idea of free speech is a political take, especially here in America, considering that it is it's literally the First Amendment in the Bill of Rights. It's not exactly an idea that, at least in my opinion, is even up to debate. People are actually entitled to say what they want, regardless whether it agrees with what you say or not. That's how I have the right and the ability to get on YouTube and to talk about the war in Ukraine the way I have.
In the past, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this was maybe a little bit before my time or when I was too young to even know what I was talking about at this point. But I believe in the past, Gaddafi was interviewed way back in the day. I think even Hitler, of all people, was interviewed. And there was really no outrage about that at the time, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe someone who lived through that and was, old enough to know what was going on could let us know if there was outrage. But we've interviewed despicable people in the past, and it has never really gotten to this level from what I've seen of people just absolutely wanting to tear it down, not air it, and totally suppress it. I would like to personally think that people still have enough rationality to sort of see lies and truth. I know some people are kind of in the middle of the fence and they're really not able to parse through all the facts because they really don't know all the facts. But at the same time, though, we have to take that risk, because if we don't, we end up risking our entire democracy, in my opinion.
And also, I'm seeing some people, I saw someone, a channel regular actually say, free speech does not give you the right to yell fire in a crowded theater. This isn't yelling fire in a crowded theater. This is an interview with a foreign leader, whether they be a terrorist or not, does not matter. It is an interview with them that is going to be released to the public and does not fall within yelling fire in a building. Not in my opinion in the slightest. y'all have to remember, I think a lot of people forget this. The reason why I've been able to get on air for 2 years and be a pro-Ukrainian is because the United States believes in something like free speech. Because it's very easy that the scale could have tipped in another direction, and the United States could have easily been sympathetic to the Russians or even openly supportive of them. And then if we're in that mindset, and that is the majority of people in this country, I could easily be quashed and suppressed and have government-sanctioned actions taken against me to stop me from talking about this very thing right here. The reason why we're even able to be pro-Ukrainians in the Western world is because the government does not step in and tell people what can and can't be said, and what are allowed ideas and what are disallowed ideas. You have to remember that just because the pro-Russians are a weird group of people, that does not give the pro-Ukrainians the right to quash them and destroy free speech, much like the Russians do from a pro-Russian lens. You become no better than them. And I can't get that point across enough, at least in my opinion. But moving on from this, because I can see that it is still a very contentious topic for sure, and one that is really drawing up a lot of strong opinions from people in the chat. Pretty interesting to see, but of course, it seems as though this will probably be one of the main topics of the night. All I'd ask is to keep it civil, because regardless of what anyone says at the end of the day on this channel, we're not going to be changing anything in any major way around the world. We're not going to be making the interview cease to exist. We're not going to be barring it from viewing on air. We're not going to be allowing it to be viewed on air. It's going to be what it is. It's really just a matter of opinion and a matter of discussion to talk about what we're saying here. But nevertheless,
indeed, and also, Enforcer, we still have one more poll to address on the topic. But real quick, I saw Heather Fitzgibbon say that regarding the past interviews with despicable leaders in the world, she said that we didn't have a way to immediately give our opinions. There was no internet, no cell phones, and the interviews were shown weeks after they happened. And honestly, like, that is true. Like, I didn't really think about that. Social media was not really prevalent or even around then when these interviews happened before. If people had outrage about the interviews, they had to keep that to themselves, or they had to simply tell the people around them, their family or their friends or whatever, and that was sort of the end of it. And they didn't even know it was happening beforehand, because nobody tipped you off, or you didn't get to see them actually traveling to go do the interview. It simply happened and then it showed up. So to be honest with you, that might have been better that way, if I'm being perfectly honest. The internet has its pros and cons, and when people are too interconnected, sometimes things get out of hand, because me personally, I'd prefer it just to happen and then we see it come out and then we react to it. But since we're able to follow along before it happens, we kind of get to go ahead and jump the gun a little bit and sort of start making conclusions before we even see the final product. But very interesting point.
And I believe, Matthew, we actually asked the audience about this very matter, and what do you think they were saying? What's their take on it?
So regarding the question of whether or not this interview being aired in the United States is going to be harmful or productive for democracy, it looks like it's actually almost evenly split. It looks like 41% said it's harmful to democracy, while 36% said it's productive for democracy. And on this one, it's a close call, I must say. I'm almost wanting to fall in the undecided camp. I'm going to lean toward the productive for democracy side, just for free speech purposes. And I think I've spoken at length about that, so I'm not going to go through it again, but I'm with the 37%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, really quickly, I'm going to leave it on this, and then we're going to move on into the rest of the war news tonight. Some people are saying that it's going to be harmful to democracy. Some people are going to say it's productive to democracy. When I think about decisions like these, I don't think about them, in my opinion, right now. I think about it as in, hopefully in 2040, I'll be president of the United States. And if I was to sit down as president of the United States in the future and have the power of the entire executive branch behind me, and I had to give an answer on this very matter, this is something that I would have to say I could not make a decision to bar someone from speaking. Because if you think about it like that, and you think about if I was in a government position and I used the government as a sword to cut down opinions that I may not want to hear, that my government may not want to push, then this country, this nation, the Western world, has devolved into something that may be really without reason to even be glorious for. The reason why the West is such a great place is because we don't have people shutting down speech like the Chinese and the Russians do. Whether or not you agree with them is one thing. Whether or not you want them to say what they want to say is another thing. But physically stopping them from being able to put out whatever they have is a little crazy. Because that would be like me saying, you know what, we ought to shut down all the pro-Palestinians. Like, you know, I think their position is completely wrong and backwards and absolutely abhorrent because they're supporting terrorists that kill thousands of innocent civilians. But still, in the United States of America, I don't have a right to go and try and take official action to shut these people down. I just never would. And especially when I think about it from a position of government, that would be insane to sit there and start saying, you know what, we do have the freedom of speech really as our first and most important right, but nevertheless, I'm going to start stomping on it because it doesn't agree with my idea of what's a correct statement. That's something that I would have to say is not a good idea. And I see some people saying lies are not productive for democracy. Just saw that. But that's the thing. That's the point of free speech. You can lie if you want to. Because if you start
It's not about the lies. The lies aren't productive to democracy, but the ability to at least say truth or lies is the free speech in itself.
Yeah, I mean, just because free speech doesn't have a lot of limits to it, crazily enough, on, like, your topics of what you can talk about and what your take on it is. Like, you can't threaten to kill people and you can't put pictures of their house online and show that you're robbing them. That's not free speech. That's just harassment. But other things, like saying, I support the Ukrainians, or I support the Russians, or I support the Israelis, or I support the Palestinians, or I support the Chinese, or I don't support the Chinese, those are all takes. Those are all opinions that you have that are protected by free speech. Even if you lie to try and further your side, that's still under free speech. There's no, and also, if we're going to start saying that lies are not permissible, who qualifies what a lie is? You could just start saying that facts are lies at that point. Like, you could say, the Russians killed around 40,000 civilians in Mariupol, which from what we know is a clear fact. Who knows? Someone in the government could go, that's a lie. Only 5,000 people were killed. We're shutting down your ability to speak on the internet for that reason. You know, like, a lot of people don't think about it in the way that government can start to abuse its powers in being able to decide things like what's a lie or what's not a lie. Because down here in the South, there was actually something, just to give you a little bit of a quick bit of history, there was a time when we actually only allowed a certain amount of people here in the South in certain states to vote because the state decided who was mentally competent to vote and who wasn't. Some of y'all may remember that as the poll tax, which is where you had some southern states deciding on certain racial backgrounds who could vote and who couldn't. And they had certain kinds of mental aptitude tests that went along not only with paying to have the ability to vote, that would decide whether you really were able to vote in the South. And a lot of states ended up using that as a weapon to make sure that certain people couldn't vote down here. And that's one of the things that I look back at and I just wonder, do people remember things like this where we give the government the ability to say what's a lie and who's competent enough to do this and who's not competent enough to do that? Because every time that has ever come around as a question, it is easily abused, and it easily starts being used in a very wrong way. And that's all I really got to say on this point. I hope that
And also, I just want to be clear real quick because I don't know if I made this clear earlier or not. I personally don't think the interview is going to be productive, like in a truth-telling sense. Obviously, the truth is not going to be told in this interview. I think that's pretty obvious from this point. I'm simply arguing for the ability to at least air it and at least hear what's said, but not necessarily go into it thinking we're going to learn something new or be shown the truth, because anybody with pretty much any rationale at this point knows that's not going to happen. And, you know, I'm trying to stay as neutral as possible, but I really don't have a high opinion of Tucker Carlson, the fellow who we're referring to. To me, he comes across as a sellout. He kind of goes along with whatever he's told to say. And at this point, now he's coming up with his own narrative and sort of running along with that. And sometimes, you know, you can't tell if he knows he's telling truth or lies or what. I'm not sure if maybe he's delusional or he's intentionally doing it. Whatever the case, he's typically got some pretty bad takes, and he's typically on the wrong side of things, in my opinion. But, Enforcer, what were you about to say?
Oh, that's all I had to say on the topic, because I think we've we've discussed this one so much, it's time to get on to other war news. Big stuff. Big things have been happening inside of Ukraine. But nevertheless, very interesting discussion. I gotta say, the live chat's been flying at a million miles an hour. A lot of people have had different opinions and different ideas. But at the end of the day, regardless of what's going on out there, I think one thing is for certain. The Leaf Spring Army will always be pro-Ukrainian, regardless of what anyone says out there in the world, regardless. And the Leaf Spring Army will continue to stand for what makes the Western world great, which is our ability to even be able to speak about something like the war in Ukraine and be in support of the Ukrainian government and its people. But moving on from that little bit of news, and also if you agree with me, put an LSA in the chat, because I'd love to see a whole bunch of people behind the cause of the Leaf Spring Army. But we're going to be moving on from the Russian Federation and back into Ukraine, because we actually saw something pretty wild today. Apparently, one of the Scalp EG missiles that ended up hitting the radar installations in Sevastopol flew over an S-400 radar site. And I gotta say, this is kind of funny, because the S-400 was actually set up inside of Crimea to stop the Scalps from being able to fly over the territory. But in this clip, it literally flew right over the air defense site. And there it went. And there's all the S-400 crap right there in the field. And they're like, holy moly. They're like, it just flew right over.
What's air defense doing?
Man, not a damn thing. It's nothing. And with that, that's the end of the clip right there. The Russians got a laugh out of it, but the guys down there at Belbek that got obliterated by the Scalps, they weren't laughing that much. But beyond that, we've also heard, we've also seen a very interesting clip of the Ukrainian Special Forces apparently going at, apparently the video was removed. I don't know why, maybe for OPSEC reasons, but we got to see that the Special Forces of Ukraine were able to find a target at sea today and destroy it. But sadly, I don't have the video for that. So we're going to be moving out of the area of Crimea, beyond the little itty-bitty bits and pieces of news we have there that are actually kind of big. And we're going to be moving on into the center of Ukraine, because we got to hear that apparently the Baykar company from Turkey is planning on opening a brand new drone manufactory inside of Ukraine, most likely to produce weapons for the Ukrainian market inside of Ukraine itself. According to the Telegram post, the Turkish company Baykar has started construction of a drone factory near Kyiv. Reuters, with reference to the head of the company, about 120 units of Bayraktar models of TB2s or TB3s will be produced per year, a fairly high amount. The construction of the plant will be completed in 12 months, then it'll be equipped. The company plans to hire about 500 employees. And despite the war, the Baykar representative said that these plans are in full swing and nothing can stop them. And it's very good to hear that while Turkey is a little odd in other instances, and of course doing Turkey things, it is great to know that the Turks still support Ukraine through and through, and are trying to see them through to victory on this point in the war. But nevertheless, moving on from that and into our next little bits of news, we got some really interesting location unknowns today. Starting off with our first one, we got to see a Russian with a stick. The stick comes with consequences. Kids and their sticks. Man, he almost blew his face off right there. He was hitting an anti-personnel mine with a stick. And so when you see it come down right there, apparently he hit it with enough force to blow up the mine. And that's the end of the clip right there. But nevertheless, very interesting to note that the Russians are coming up with very archaic ways to deal with the mines. But we also got to hear from United 24 that while they're doing some archaic things, they are trying to figure out new ways to attack the Ukrainians and have been able to produce some cheaper end weaponry to try and fight the Ukrainians with. So, without further ado, here's the clip.
Russia's war machine is in full swing. And while, or precisely because the first year of war was an absolute disaster for them, they have stepped their game up a notch, upgrading old weapons as well as inventing and developing new ones. Now, having said that, so far none of these new Russian inventions have been of the caliber that they would change the course of the entire war. Some of the things we will introduce here are only in the test phase. The Russians also face the same problem the Ukrainians do, which is primarily a lot of asymmetry on the battlefield. Big, modern, expensive equipment like a new tank can sometimes be destroyed by small FPV drone worth less than $1,000. New inventions don't stay new for long also. There are many new ideas, but mass producing something is a totally different story. What these inventions do though is increase the difficulty for the Ukrainian armed forces and increase the inflicted damage on Ukraine and its population. So, welcome to Talking Tactics, where this week we want to introduce a couple of new Russian weapons and developments of the past years and see how or what damage they do on the actual battlefield. Maritime drones. After Ukraine bolstered some pretty substantial successes with their newly developed maritime drones, Russia obviously felt the need to catch up. They supposedly are trying to reverse engineer a Ukrainian sea baby from remains they found from Ukraine's prize creation. But so far, their biggest publicly known achievement is the Odovanchik, which means dandelion. We don't know much, but according to the Russians themselves, it has a range of 200 kilometers and a top speed of 80 kilometers per hour. It can carry a payload of 650 kilograms. All this is less than the Ukrainian sea baby.
Also, it's barely enough to reach Odessa from Crimea.
So for now, it doesn't look like the dandelion will do much damage, but this is just the beginning. The Russian Ministry of Defense apparently ordered 10 drones for testing, and as usual in this war, the tests mostly take place directly in action. Poison gas. But also in the shadow, we are seeing some Russian developments that even for their standards are pretty below the belt. According to Captain Andriy Rudik, a representative of the Center for the Research of Trophy and Prospective Weapons and Military Equipment of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, in December 2023
he's got a long title,
alone,
man.
Russia has
Jeez.
used grenades
Yeah.
containing poisonous gas a total of 81 times. It's a new model of gas grenade named the RGVO. The grenade contains chloroacetophenone, an asphyxiant gas that is prohibited by the Geneva Protocol for the Prohibition of Chemical Warfare. The captured grenade was manufactured in 2023 by a plant that has been operating since Soviet times, night vision FPVs. The idea to make drones more night operable is not an originally Russian idea. Last summer, Ukrainian developers also started testing night vision FPVs. But the Russians have apparently managed to mass produce these to the extent that since the beginning of winter, they're really causing some havoc. The internet sadly is full of videos that prove it. The cameras on these FPVs range anywhere from simple models available for around $50 like the Runcam Night Eagle 3, which, don't work in pitch black, you need some moonlight or some other light source. But the Russians have also been using cheap thermal models like the UTI 260M, which costs around $290, or Victor 328B, which costs $340. This development is extremely concerning because, for a while, nighttime was a relatively safe time to move things around, so to rotate troops, to reposition large equipment. Our colleague Zhenya Melnik made a report about a mortar unit that for months just drove to the position in pitch black darkness with a night vision device. With the use of night vision FPV drones, moving in the night might still be safer than during the day, but it's gotten a whole lot more dangerous. Shaheeds. There have also been many reports of new modernized Shaheed suicide drones. For example, the Shaheed 107, which is supposed to have the ability to detect Western modern air defense systems, or the Shaheed 238, which has a jet engine instead of a propeller. According to the Russians, it can travel at over 800 kilometers per hour. Neither Ukraine nor Russia has officially confirmed the appearance of the new Shaheed 238 in the theater of war. Also, it's not clear what the production capacity of these drones is and how many are actually in Russian possession. Shaheed drones were dangerous enough. The propeller, which made them pretty slow and also pretty loud, was from a Ukrainian perspective one of the good things about them. But a fast drone, or using them not because they are so efficient as an attack drone, but to spy out the position of air defense systems, is a serious threat. Missiles. In December, in light of another massive Russian missile attack, the following video surfaced, showing a Russian Kh-101 cruise missile firing off decoy flares. Then, pictures surfaced of the debris, but we still don't know what exactly this missile releases, since there is no smoke trail visible in the video, pointing to spectral flares, for example, or chaff, often made up of thin metal strips or fiberglass threads, which is meant to confuse radars. We also don't know how effective these measures are, but I guess we will find out during the course of the war. Electronic warfare. We shouldn't underestimate Russian electronic warfare, even that is sort of a black cloud until now. Fact is, they have been making pretty insane leaps, especially in counter-drone warfare, spoofing, signal jamming, etc. That means they can either take control and capture a Ukrainian drone or just render it useless. According to General Zaluzhny, the Russians developed around 60 new systems in the past decade, but the most recent creations are adapted to the needs of the war in Ukraine. We're talking about trench electronic warfare systems like Silot, Piton, or Harpoon. All the information publicly available until now is the odd photo, but according to soldiers' reports, it's good. Anyway, there's a lot more we didn't manage to mention this week. If you have any suggestions on new Russian weapons, be sure to write them in the comments. Otherwise, thanks for watching Talking Tactics, hit like and subscribe, and see you next week.
And that's the end of the clip, but that was United 24's small documentary on all of the new weapon systems that we have seen being introduced by the Russian Federation. Of course, they're all small attempts to try and make the Russian army a little bit more effective, and some of them are achieving what the Russians are looking for, but still, the war is a very uphill battle for the Russians, and the Ukrainians have been doing quite well to hold their lines, and not only that, continue to inflict incredibly high casualties compared to their own. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see that the rotating cylinder drones pledged by Taiwan have apparently already arrived, or the plans to make these rotating cylinders have arrived, and the Ukrainians are now starting to produce their first initial prototypes. These are really cool and have a lot of promise, but I'm going to show you all what they do in this video. You see here that it rotates and drops a bomb, and then rotates and drops the next one.
Well, that's pretty cool.
This is revolutionary right here.
Официально работает. Стабильно, нормально. И смотрите, какая еще фишка.
That increases the efficiency of Ukrainian drones, because up until this point, the Ukrainians have only been able to carry about 2 drone bomblets, or 3, on these smaller drones like this one. Now they are able to increase the capacity of their drones nearly by another 100%, and carry even more bomblets on a single drone sortie than they have before, thus increasing the firepower of their drone forces, and hopefully increasing the loss rates that the drone forces are able to inflict onto Russian forces. This is big news.
You know, ironically enough, like in the midst of this development they've got right here with this drone system, Zelensky actually announced today that he's creating an unmanned systems forces branch of the Ukrainian military. So maybe that's why he made it. They're like they've come up with a faster way to drop the bomblets, so now they can dedicate a whole branch to that unmanned system.
Maybe so. And also, Matthew, I think we've got some interesting comments from folks in the chat about that.
And we do, actually. And we actually have a comment from Dad Good, who throws in a $20 donation.
Hey!
And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. And he says, with the blocking of U.S. aid, does it impact support, parts, and ammo for existing equipment like Bradleys and Abrams tanks?
And thank you so much for the support, Dad Good. Also, good to have you back. I haven't seen you in the Super Chats in a minute. And to answer that, yes, it does make the provision of supplies and parts for those systems a lot more difficult, because usually those have to be sourced directly through the United States. There is, however, a workaround. Shells from Germany will work inside of an Abrams. That is entirely possible. But the Bradley and the Abrams are specifically American vehicles, so to get any replacement parts for them, the U.S. would have to provide them to the Ukrainians. So for now, it is going to start becoming more difficult for them to be able to try and field those systems, but there is at least a small silver lining. The Polish can take up, at least temporarily for the moment, support to Ukraine for their logistics on the Abrams and the Bradley. Poland does use Abrams and Bradleys, so they probably do have a pretty extensive amount of spare components and parts to be able to help keep Abrams and Bradleys running. So it's entirely possible that the Ukrainians may have no ill effects due to the lack of U.S. support at the moment as far as keeping American equipment running, but there's also a 50-50 chance that they may actually run into some issues, especially if Poland doesn't step forward and help with the logistical end of keeping those vehicles running. So that's actually a pretty good question, Dad Good, and I hope that does address that well, because while it's not necessarily about the drones, it is about continued Ukrainian logistical support, kind of like we're seeing now with the Ukrainians trying to work out how to get more bang for their buck with their drone forces. But with that, I gotta thank you so much for the support, Dad Good, because folks like you help this channel to keep on running. And it's incredible to know that you've found the channel for so long, Dad Good, to be worthwhile to help this channel to keep running. It means a lot to me that folks enjoy this channel, what we are and who we do, and are always helping us in the background to support this thing and help to keep rolling. We run no ads, we have no sponsors. Everything we do is thanks to y'all, and that's why I always take a moment to thank each and every one of y'all personally, like you, Dad Good, because if it wasn't for y'all's support through the Super Chats, this channel would not be possible for a single day. And I gotta thank you so much once again for the support and helping this thing to be possible, and of course, a huge thanks to everyone who supports the channel and makes it possible. But with that, Matthew, I think we even have another question.
We have yet even another one. This one is from Rick Clay, who's also a longtime channel viewer who throws in a $20 donation. And thank you as well, Rick, along with Dad Good, for helping to keep funding the channel and keeping this operation running. And Rick says it's a back channel. And I assume he's referring to that certain journalist interviewing the devil.
And yeah, that's it. I would have to say, thank you so much for the support, Rick. And I guess it is a back channel in a way. You know, not wanting to go over that whole topic again, because I think we talked about that for like 20 minutes, but Nevertheless, it certainly is a back channel in a sense, but also I would have to say I'm not expecting anything good to come out of whatever's coming, but it's going to come anyways, you know. But nevertheless, thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running, Rick, and thank you for finding the channel worthwhile to support. Also, by the way, I got to give a huge thanks to everyone in the Least Spring Army for raising $8.5 thousand for Razom for Ukraine, which is unbelievable. That was a huge amount. Actually, one of the largest.
That was tremendous.
Yeah, actually, it was one of the largest fundraisers we had in like 2 months. And I got to thank y'all because it's incredible to know that y'all been doing this for so long and helping out in Ukraine, you know, and all of that. It's been absolutely incredible. And also, one second, I got to read this. Let's see here. Let's see. I have to, y'all two show your bias about talking about non-biased journalists tonight. What the hell do you mean? That's not what we said. I'm not going to be rude to you. Well, actually, I am. That's not even what we said, pal. We sat there and said the guy is as biased as hell. And I said that unbiased journalism is the standard, and that guy's not unbiased. So I don't even know what the hell you heard. You just heard whatever you wanted to make us your villain tonight. But good on you. Apparently you can't listen. But nevertheless, I hope that does address that well. I'm sorry, everyone. I don't know why in the world I had to go read that one and address it specifically. But when I see people trying to take our words and twist it in a way where it works for them and whatever their goals are, that is something that does get me a little bit aggravated. So, oh, Matthew got him. I'll back up there and burn him. Oh, get him! Get him! But with that, I hope that does address that well, Rick. Because once again, I have to make this clear. I actually have to take a moment to make this clear. Because I see that because I sat there and said, you know, I believe in the values of the United States that the country was founded on, like letting people say what they want. Apparently people are now going to take that and say, because I'm supporting free speech, even if it doesn't agree with what I believe in, now I'm apparently a supporter of Tucker Carlson and Russians. I have to make this quite clear. Some people are very narrow-minded and apparently cannot understand that there is an opposite side to whatever you think in life, on everything. It's not your role as an American to try and, or really as anyone in the Western world, to try and shut those people down. It's your role to argue against them and hopefully win over people by having a superior argument. It's not supposed to be your God-given right to be able to shut down people that disagree with you. That is clearly authoritarian, it's communist, it's fascist, it's entirely un-American to shut other people down for saying something that you disagree with. Because with the equal right that y'all are trying to give yourselves to be able to try and shut down pro-Russians, the pro-Russians could give themselves that exact same right to shut us down. So do you want me to stop being on air and stop running this news? Because if you want to shut down the opposite side, that's what you're asking for them to do if they ever get power. That's what you're asking for. I don't know if anyone sees that, because if you sit there and you start rolling out authoritarianism in one way because you think it's the right call, it's very easy for that little lever to switch the opposite direction and for it to steamroll you. Look at all the people who supported the Nazis in Germany in the 1930s, and look how it ended for them. They usually ended up getting betrayed by their own government and killed. Look at all the people who supported Mao and Stalin, or even Lenin, and the rise of communism in China and Russia, and look what it did for them. They all ended up getting killed because that little lever where they sat there and said, these people are terrible and we ought to shut them down and even kill them because we disagree with them. Look how it flipped right back on them. And most of those people ended up getting purged by their own government. That is not what America stands for. If America I will die on this hill. If America stands for shutting down people we disagree with and destroying freedom of speech while pretending we have it, we are literally nothing worth fighting for. We may as well be China and Russia, and that's why I believe in this country, and that's why I believe in the Western world, is because we actually allow people over here to say something whether we like it or not. We don't live in Russia or China where the nation can actually tell you to shut your mouth and put you in prison for years or even silence you because they disagree with you. That's not something I live for. If that was the nation I lived in, even if the ebb and flow society like it is right now is with me, I don't find that a country worth living in or even fighting for at that point. Because if I can't say what I want without fear that a massive crowd of people are going to come down and crush me and destroy my life because I disagreed with them, that's absolutely ridiculous. And you know, if people disagree with that, sorry. And you know, I'm still pro-Ukrainian at the end of the day, but I'm not going to sit there and pretend like this country actually believes in our values of freedom and liberty while also advocating to shut down people I disagree with. That's crazy to me. Absolutely crazy. And that's my take. That's my opinion. Because, you know, I made it as clear as I possibly could. Don't agree with the guy at all. I believe he's unbiased and not a great journalist. But if it comes to a question of free speech and allowing it for the ideals of the United States, or shutting it down and really becoming an authoritarian and a Russian in our own way, but just slightly different, I would rather go with allowing whatever the hell he's got to say and continuing to keep our values intact, and that's the reason we fight for. That's what we continue to support Ukraine for, because our world isn't going to be a Russian world, it's going to be a free world. But with that, I hope that does address that well. If you agree with me, put a Lee Spring Army in the chat for all that matters. But with that, let's get on to our final question, and then we're going to be moving right back into the news.
All right, so our last one goes to Greg Carrier, who's also a longtime channel viewer, and he throws in a $20 donation as well. And thank you as well very much, Greg, for helping to keep us running through thick and thin. And he says, for your understanding of Western media and and letting me try to understand USA mindset of normal people.
And thank you so much for the support, Greg, and thank you for listening to what I have to say, because it's, you know, and I see a lot of people saying, please move on, but it's kind of the leading topic of the night, and I'm seeing some people out there that have some really interesting takes. And it really it just blows me away how easily people want to throw away the rights and liberties that the Western world has fought for hundreds of years because they think it would be right in this instance. Because you know something, you don't even have to look that far in American history for dark moments where we sat there and turned on citizens and people in the idea that this was right at the moment. And then we look back in 10 years and we go, that was an absolute damn shame what we did to these people back then. The Red Scare is the best example. We sat there and went, you know what? We believe in free speech and the idea that everyone has a right to say what they want. But in this particular moment, we're going to try and find people that don't really seem as, you know, wholehearted American as possible, and we're pretty much going to persecute them publicly and call them communists and ruin their life for decades. And that's absolutely insane to me to think that people never learn. You know, like let me explain this really quickly. The same mindset that people are having right now with this is the exact same mindset that the Germans had against the Jews in the 30s. They said, you know what? They're the problem. We ought to shut them down from even being able to own a business. And then look what that turned into. You know, it turned into one of the worst crises, or the worst genocide that's been seen in the modern day. Mindsets where people disagree with other citizens to the point that they would want to militantly shut down what they're saying is not a good look. That makes us look as bad as the Russians. And then the Russians have a point. That's the craziest thing about it. In the attempt to make sure the Russians don't have a point, y'all give people like that, give them the biggest point that they can possibly have. Because we sit there and go, the Russians shut down free speech, and then we'll shut down an interview like this, and then the Russians will go, see that right there? They shut down free speech, but they try and make it look like it's tolerable and sensible. That's not a good look. It would be better to let that thing go out and let it be heard and seen, because then we can sit there and go, you know what? We're such a freedom-loving country. We'll even let stupid comments like that be put out on air, and people can just listen to it and laugh at it because they know it's a joke. And it's such a joke, and we feel so non-threatened by it that we won't even sit there and really care if it goes out on air, because any rational and sensible-minded person would see it's nothing but fluff and sales talk to try and make the Russians look better. But anyways, I hope that does address that well. And some people are saying the opinion you have is naive. I just saw that. And I don't mean to sit here and just fight people all night. But if that is a naive opinion, then the founding principles of the entire Western world must be naive, and we may as well be the Chinese for that matter. We may as well just shut people down for whatever the hell we want and just support the government as they do it, because why not? Why not at that point? But anyways, hope that does address that well. Thank you so much for the support, Greg, and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you help this channel to be possible and help us to be unique, whether it be appreciated or not. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. And we are on to our next bit of news, which actually moves us into this new kind of a Russian attempt at demining. And this one was very interesting. Observe. Oh!
Observe. A TBI.
And I would say probably more than that. The
Probably
way
an
that guy
STI
started,
too, but
but with that,
that was wild, and I shouldn't have said that.
man, that was wild and for real. But with that, we're now moving on into our next clip where we got to see some training with the 151st Brigade. And we can see here some Ukrainians, of course, on the training fields, making sure to get familiar with their rifles and hopefully being a lot more effective in the field. Also, beautiful AK-74, just like the one we reviewed on this channel. Check it out, by the way. We actually have a video on an AK-74 just like that one. They're actually really good rifles. Can't really hate on them that much. But moving on from that, and into our next bit of news, we can also see that apparently, like we saw in the 924 clip, one of the Russian drones with the high-end thermal cameras has been captured. This one was actually worth about $1,320 that we've seen on this FPV drone. A very high-end one, and pretty wild to see that the Russians are starting to try and up their drone game and make it possibly as competent as the Ukrainians, which actually might end up being concerning if they start producing these in mass. But for now, we understand that they're in slightly limited numbers. But moving on from that and into our last bit of news, we also got to see the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours, which was pretty high.
Oh, buddy, we got 10 Bobcats in a day. Let's go.
Let's get it,
go.
baby.
I'm telling you what.
10 Bobcat skid steers destroyed in a single day. Pretty freaking good. And not only that, 1,020 Russian soldiers were wiped out, along with 35 armored personnel carriers, 41 supply trucks, 17 tanks, 18 artillery pieces, and 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. Overall, it was a pretty good day, and I gotta say, I'll love to see it. With that, we're going to be moving on from the casualty report and even further on down the line and into the direction of Svatove, where we got to see that a Russian TOS was on fire and in flames.
Здравствуйте, Цепёк. Страшное оружие, да?
A toasty. That's the thing is, oh my lord, they melt, like the fire melted the actual launch system on top of the tank. It's like halfway burned off. And that's the end of the clip right there. But absolutely wonderful to see that the Ukrainians were able to make sure to take out a nice little toss up in that area. But moving on closer to Svatove, we also got to see the Ukrainians hitting a KAMAZ. And y'all know that song, Polzhet KAMAZ. But here's the clip. And we're going to have to mute the techno music. And John, you got a good question. How's it going in Avdiivka? If you want to know, make sure to go back to the very beginning of the stream and check that out, because we talked about that in great detail for about the first 30 minutes. And we can see them hitting another KAMAZ right there. And that's the end of the clip. But absolutely wonderful to see that they were able to knock out a KAMAZ. But moving on from that, and even a little bit further on down into the direction of Torske, we also got to see a T-64BV on the way to the front, driving past a yellow bus. Kind of like Yellow Submarine, but even better. The T-64BV is a slightly older variant of the T-64 main battle tank that is in service largely with the Ukrainians, in small numbers with the Russians, but it is a higher end and a higher quality main battle tank than the T-72. It's great to see one of these in the area, and hopefully it's doing its part in the Battle of the Crimea Forest, or as it's being called, the Severonsky Forest. But moving on out of that area, and even further on down and into the area of Kuzminivka, we got to see a Danish Caesar firing a support mission in this area. Check it out. And we can see
That's
it here.
a big gun.
Man, and not
and
only
got
that,
a TV, a mobile TV on the side.
yeah, so that way you can watch your favorite shows. That's it. We can see them loading up the piece again and getting it ready to fire. And there goes the charge. The gun's ready to fire. And firing right there. Man, I love those.
These kids these days have it so easy. They don't even have to load it anymore. They have machines to do that.
Yeah,
I remember when we used to have to walk 10 miles through the snow with the shell and everything, crawl through the mud, and even hose it down before we put it in the gun.
Man, I gotta tell you what, back in my day, you outworked a damn day in your life. But moving on.
You got soft hands, boy.
You know, you got those soft hands, boy. You ain't worked a damn day in your life. I've worked 100 hours a week for my entire life. But anyways, moving on from that, in the area north of Bakhmut, we didn't get any news from Bakhmut today. So we're going to be skipping that part of the battlefield because there was no frontline developments and the battlefield was remaining stagnant with no video footage to cover, so there's not really a lot for us to extrapolate out of the frontline situation in the area. But moving on down and into the area of Novomikhailivka, there was actually a lot going on down here. We got to see that the Russians lost a 62mm Vasilik in this area. The Vasilik is an automatic mortar with an exceptionally high rate of fire. But we can see the Ukrainian drone found one inside of this building right here, and is certainly calling that back to the artillery, so that way they can slam this building and knock it out. Oh, never mind. They actually brought in a Baba Yaga and they're dropping an anti-tank mine on the roof. I'm sure that's going to be wildly effective.
I am so heartwarmed to see that everyone knew the joke I was talking about, the 10 miles through the snow, uphill both ways joke. Everybody knew exactly what I was talking about. It's like every old timer has told that story at least once or twice in their life. I don't think anybody's exempt from that.
Oh, man. It's funny. It's literally everyone in the chat. It's like, oh, yeah, I know that one. And there's the Vasilik, what you see kind of sticking out of the rubble, but probably destroyed. Love to see it. And with that, that's the end of the little clip right there. Wonderful to know, wonderful to see. Moving on from that and into the area of Volodar, we can also see a BTR-4 in this area moving around in the mud. I know that song. Like, it's been a million times I've heard it, but nice to see a little BTR-4 on the move. Two-hip Matthew said, "Who you calling Pinhead?" So,
I said nobody. I didn't call anybody old.
Man, we ain't calling nobody.
Calling them out. That's when he knows somebody feels insecure when you're not talking about them whatsoever, and they say, "Who are you calling old?" It's like I didn't even say you.
Hey, we're not calling anyone old.
I mean, come on. I didn't call you old. I mean, it was a perfect call, perfect statement. Nobody was called old. Nobody was insulted. You calling me a jerk?
Well, you see some more Ukrainians riding through the mud right here. When you see them riding through, oh, that's rough mud. Oh, that's real rough, real rough. Yikes. But they're making it through. That's the end of that clip, but still interesting to see. Interesting to know. We're going to be moving on from that clip and out into the southern front near Huilopol, because we got to see some Russians getting hit by some drone attacks down in the southern front, but apparently that's now been listed as not too good to see, so can't show that to y'all, but we can move on down into the area of Krynky and show y'all what's been going on down here. Today, we got to see a beautiful sight. The Ukrainians were able to raise the battle flag over the city of Krynky. Here's the clip. This was published by Deep State. It was actually geolocated to the center of the village. And we can see right there the Ukrainian flag flying in the center of Krynky. A beautiful sight.
Man, some people are gonna say that's that moon shot when they planted the flag. That's where they did it.
Where the wind come from?
it's the moon studios. It's NASA studios right here in Ukraine.
Man, the Earth is flat. I swear, it's flat. Man, you can get up in a plane and see the curvature of the Earth, man. But anyways, that's the end of that clip. Beautiful to see that they were able to plant the flag. And also, you can geolocate that really easily, because here in Krynky, that flag is right about here somewhere. Let me go back and look at that. Yeah, right there. So here's the edge of the forest, so the flag's here. And then you see this giant grid layout of trees here, and you see that in the clip. So we know that that is literally dead center of Krynky, and the flag was planted. The Ukrainians control the village. Wonderful to know. But of course, the village has been completely destroyed. There were village houses here, but due to the heavy bombardment and artillery shelling by the Russians, there is none left at all. But moving on from that, we're going to get into our next clip where we got to see a Ukrainian soldier showing us the town of Krynky today.
Не спешите. Ля, ну.
That was like a haunting laugh. Whoever just let that out from the battlefield. Go back for a second. I want to hear that again.
Let's see here. I think it was about...
Ля, no.
Your continued shelling as they're walking through the rest of the village. Of course, we're not going to be exactly geolocating this clip because these are Ukrainian forces, and from what we understand, the video is about 24 hours old, so this is pretty recent. We know it's in Krynky, but I'm not going to, you know, like, geolocate it to a specific spot.
Я просто смухи тут стану, что, блядь, если что, я выбежу, ёбну.
Oh, you see, this guy actually has an AK-12. Huh. Well, that's the end of the clip, but of course, giving us a really good look at Krynky as it stands at the moment. Moving on from that and into one of our last clips, we also get to see a damaged T-90 being filmed near the outskirts of Krynky here in this clip. Look at that. Well, that one didn't make it far, did it? No. The finest Russian tank on the field. And so many of them have been destroyed. At least 50 of these things are destroyed now. It's indicating that the Russians are producing new ones. But at the same time, they're losing them pretty quickly. I mean, they don't really seem to be much better than a T-72B3 or even a T-80 for that matter. They're doing about as badly. And
there's something wrong with the hatch, I guess, and also the turret. They're circling it.
Also, no. So, sadly, whoever did this is not looking at these tanks close enough, because yes, it is a T-90M that we saw get destroyed, but this is a T-90M, and then the next picture they flick to is a reference for a T-90M. They show a T-72B3 with a... maybe they're trying to say it's not a T-72B3, it's a T-90M, because the cupola is completely different, the ERA layout is completely different, the gun's completely different. I mean, like, I guess that's what they're showing, because I can't really think of it of any other way, but yeah, I guess that's what they're trying to show, is that it's not a T-72B3, it's a T-90M. Oh, I guess they are, because now they're showing, like, every iteration of tank. That's a T-80BV, that's a T-80BVM right there.
I guess they're just turret, hatch, and whatever enthusiast.
Let's see, the turret cheeks, the turret cupola, gun mantle, and the front of barrel enthusiast. Like, they were showing it on every single one.
Couldn't name all the parts, obviously. I just went blank.
You're like, they're things, but
and
like,
whatever.
Honest point. But moving on from that, we also got to see some pictures of some Ukrainian Mi-17s near Kherson. These were a part of the 11th Army Aviation Brigade and were pictured at a forward area. But still, really cool to see. Love the helmets. The helmets that the Ukrainians have are really cool. And of course, the Mi-17 is the backbone of the Ukrainian helicopter forces. But with that, that's really all we have in this area. The Ukrainians are holding strong in Krynky. The Russians are not able to push them out. And for now, that will probably be the case well on into the future. But we're now going to be moving on up to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 713 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. And
give me the speech, please. Give me the speech.
Thank the Lord. No green screen. So, here's the speech.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Короткий звіт про цей день. Провів нараду щодо міжнародної активності для нашої держави в лютому. Увесь місяць розплановано дуже детально. Фактично кожен день буде багато перемовин, зустрічей, нових домовленостей для України, для зміцнення наших воїнів. Провів сьогодні також нараду щодо нових угод про безпекові гарантії для України. Працюємо зараз з кількома країнами. Доволі амбітні можуть бути угоди, хороший зміст. І я вдячний дипломатичним командам, які задіяні. Ми повинні вже найближчими місяцями показати такий результат в розбудові архітектури безпекових угод, який дасть потрібні позитивні сигнали на весь цей рік. Сигнали дієвої підтримки України, тривалої підтримки. Сигнали чіткої довіри наших партнерів до здатності України захищатись і захиститись від російської агресії. Світ готовий дієво допомагати лише тим, чия сила очевидна. Сьогодні провів кілька міжнародних зустрічей. Перша – Португалія. В Україні з візитом були міністри закордонних справ та освіти Португалії. Провів зустріч з ними, подякував за досягнутий рівень співпраці між нашими державами, за довіру до України і до наших людей. Одне з питань в розмові – це участь Португалії у відбудові в Україні, і, зокрема, у відбудові в Житомирській області, саме освітніх закладів. Дуже розраховуємо, що проекти такої відбудови будуть реалізовані якнайшвидше. Друга зустріч за сьогодні директор МАГАТЕ Гросі. Він планує відвідати Запорізьку атомну станцію. Ми доволі детально обговорили ситуацію на станції та безпекові виклики зараз. Російська окупація ЗАЕС повинна припинитись, і це головна передумова відновлення радіаційної безпеки для усього нашого регіону. Подякував Гросі за підтримку формули миру та за участь представника МАГАТЕ у роботі радників щодо формули. Дуже важливим є той факт, що Україна була обрана до Ради керуючих МАГАТЕ. Це очевидна ознака того, що світ визнає нашу здатність відновлювати стабільність і працювати заради безпеки. Третя за сьогодні зустріч з керівником Організації економічного співробітництва та розвитку, однієї з найбільш поважних міжнародних організацій, яка об'єднує найбільш розвинуті країни світу. Подякував за підтримку нашої держави і за відкриття офісу організації в Україні. Ми постійно додаємо змісту нашій взаємодії і, попри все, рухаємось до повноправного приєднання до цього клубу, до Організації економічного співробітництва та розвитку. Обговорили сьогодні і залучення коштів для відбудови в Україні. Ще одне стратегічне питання. Щойно підписав указ, який розпочинає створення у наших силах оборони окремого роду сил безпілотних систем. І це не питання майбутнього, це те, що повинно дати цілком конкретний результат вже найближчим часом. Цей рік повинен стати вирішальним в багатьох аспектах і, очевидно, на полі бою. Дрони, безпілотні системи довели свою ефективність в боях на землі, у небі та в морі. Україна реально змінила безпекову ситуацію в Чорному морі завдяки дронам. Відбиття штурмів на землі – це багато в чому робота саме дронів. Масштабне знищення окупантів та їхньої техніки – це також дрони. Зараз перелік завдань чіткий. Спеціальні штатні посади під роботу з дронами, спеціальні підрозділи, ефективне тренування, систематизація досвіду, постійне масштабування виробництв і залучення найкращих ідей, найкращих спеціалістів у цю сферу. Це завдання і для армії, і для Міністерства оборони та уряду загалом. І щоб дати необхідну координацію в силах оборони, забезпечити належний рівень планування та якість логістики, в структурі Збройних сил будуть створені сили безпілотних систем. Відповідні пропозиції будуть внесені на розгляд РНБО. Продовжуємо перезавантаження державної системи, тих її елементів, які потрібні, щоб Україна досягла своїх цілей. Цілком справедливих цілей. Україна може перемогти, має перемогти, і ми повинні усе для цього зробити. Я дякую всім, хто допомагає. Слава усім, хто б'ється та працює заради нашої держави. Слава Україні!
And Hiram
Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. And that's bringing us into our second segment of the night, where we get to talk to all of y'all. We get to talk to y'all about all kinds of things. We, of course, get to talk to the folks and thank them who support the channel tonight and help it to keep running. And we also make sure to get to talk to everyone in the live chat as well. But before we do that, I've got to give a huge thanks once again to everyone who is supporting the channel and helping it to keep running. Y'all are the only thing that makes it possible, and that's why we always go out of our way every single day and every single night to make sure to thank each and every one of y'all individually for your support, because you help this channel to keep on running, unique as it is. Y'all help it to be able to run ad-free, sponsor-free, and make sure that we don't have to bend our will to anyone out there in the world who wants us to say certain things and do certain stuff. We are able to do exactly what y'all like to see on this channel, thanks to y'all's continuous support. And I got to thank all of y'all for that before we even get into the super chats. But with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and also big shout out to Andy L. as well as James McEldoon, who each put in a $20 donation but did not leave comments. And also shout out to Frida Love, who put in the 10 as well and also did not leave a comment. But thank you, Andy, James, and Frida, very much for that support. And I hate we don't have a comment to address, because we always love to address everyone's comments, especially with the support. But we appreciate it very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank all three of y'all, Andy, James, and Frida, for the support and helping the channel to keep running, because y'all make this thing possible. It's incredible to know that every single one of y'all enjoys the channel enough to support it and help the thing to keep rolling, because if it wasn't for y'all, this channel would not be possible. I know I say that so much, but we literally do rely on y'all each and every day to keep the channel rolling. Y'all are the only thing that makes it possible for us to do this as a job. And I got to thank all three of y'all once again for y'all support and making this channel possible, because y'all help us to be able to be who we are and say what we have to say. And I know a lot of people are like, well, how in the world does super chats, people giving the channel money, help you to do that? Well, it helps us to do that because, of course, we have to make a living off of this somehow. So here's the three ways we can. We can either do it through sponsors, and then we have to be scared that sponsors may not like what we say sometimes and then may revoke their sponsorships. Or we have to run YouTube ads, which would severely, in fact, it would completely eliminate our ability to actually show war footage. And, you know, actually, really quickly, I'll tell you this. You can actually find a lot of Ukraine war channels out there who are making sure to be ad-friendly. What? There's channels out there who only cover Ukraine war news so that way they can make ad money? Yes, there is. And you can always find those because they never show war footage. They only talk about it in a general sense. That's something that's really a big giveaway, because if you ever see any Ukraine war channel that never shows war footage and they just talk about it, and then you also see an ad run on their video, they're making sure to just do it for AdSense. That's really how you can find out. Or there is a third way that we can run the channel, which is through viewer support, through super chats and through Patreon and things like that. And y'all are really the people who make this thing possible, exactly the way we run it. And we are able to say whatever we want, like the things we've said tonight. May be controversial, may not be controversial. People may respect the fact that we run this channel the way it is. And regardless, y'all's support helps us to continue to make that possible. And so with that, I got to thank all three of y'all once again, because y'all are making this channel possible. And if it wasn't for y'all, I wouldn't be able, Matthew and me wouldn't be able to be on air saying what we're saying. And with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, Enforcer, I asked the audience, but I want to ask you now. I was talking about how we have free speech in America, okay? We had the First Amendment, free speech. Yeah, we've discussed that at length tonight.
Uh-huh.
But what about paid speech? If we have free speech, like, that's great and all, but we need paid speech. Like, people need to make a little extra money around here.
You know, you're right. What a question. What a question.
Let's pass a law.
We need fee speech, too. We need speech where if you say it, you pay a fee, or something like that. But still, that's a good joke, man. I like to see it. That was a good one. And also, let's see here. Just looking through the rest of the live chat, seeing if there's anything interesting. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Scott Jensen, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Scott, for that support. He says, Putin is going to tell TC, I don't know who TC is. He says that he will only be able to end the war if somebody gets elected. Oh my goodness, that's political.
Oh my goodness. Oh my lord.
My goodness.
We
That's
actually
scary.
we actually can't address that one. I hate to say it. But I do thank you for the support and helping the channel to keep running. But sadly, I can't address that because that is inherently political. I can't even really get into my take on that. And, you know, like I try not to, y'all, but I'll try and be a little bit more clear with y'all here. Why it's so easy for me to not get into politics is because I really despise both sides equally at this point. And I know that sounds like, you know, another group. There's a third group that usually falls in that bracket. I don't really like them either. And that's why it's very easy for me to not be a political person and to just absolutely love one side, because really all sides are stupid. And I think, you know, if any of y'all are paying attention a lot to American news, you could see that show True Today again, which was really ridiculous to me, but I can't even really get into that much because we don't talk about politics on this channel. But beyond that, I can't really say anything about that. I'm going to try and say something. That kind of, like, this kind of stuff is just to create chaos. And of course, it's part of free speech. But that's why I always think that Americans should never really pay a lot of mind to what foreign leaders say about America. It just pisses me off, y'all, to see, like, Xi Jinping or Putin say something about America, and then Americans of certain affiliations actually ride on what they say. It's like, these people are dictators. They are liars. Look at their country and look at the oppressive regimes they run. And then you believe they're going to be honest and truthful about the situation in America? They don't even know what's going on over here most of the time. Like America is a big deal for them, sure, but they don't know what's really going on over here, and their opinions may as well be as completely pointless as an Iranian opinion on America. You know, it's just completely pointless, and it's ridiculous. It's just so ridiculous to me whenever I see memes on the internet where someone's like, Xi Jinping said this about America, and he couldn't have ever been more right. It's like, that's literally what he's saying it for, is for fools like these to believe he's right. Usually it's like the communist-leaning people who believe Xi is right, and then it's kind of like the fascist-ish people who believe Putin's right. And it's just so stupid. It's like, do people not see that these people are saying these specific things because they know it's going to rile up a certain part of America, and then both working together, they can pull both sides apart so far that, like a rubber band being let go, they're going to snap back into the middle and go at each other's throats by the time they get done winding up the country. Nobody sees that. Nobody does. It just drives me crazy because, like, I honestly feel, I don't know if most of y'all are agreeing with me here, but I honestly feel like I'm one of the few people that sees that foreign countries like Russia and China are constantly trying to turn public opinion, and instead of people seeing that and being like, you're not an American, and you're especially not our friend, you stay out of it. Instead, people will sit there and take what they say and be like, oh yes, I believe in it 100%. What they're saying is exactly right. It just blows me away. Like, it really does. It just, I can't even put into words how blown away I am every time I see that in America, because like they're both working on it. Like, people don't see that either. The Russians rile up one side, the Chinese rile up the other, and both together they are just helping to polarize the nation and build up tensions to the point it finally will snap, and nobody sees it. And that's something that I like. I don't know, y'all. I don't know. I don't even know where to go with it, but it's saddening to see, and people don't even see it. Like, people really don't. And they'll feed exactly into what the Chinese want or what the Russians want, and they won't even think twice about, maybe they're saying these things so that way I'll get more vehement and violent about my opinions. Nobody ever. They
might as well go ahead and say, "What's up, Beijing?
What's up, Beijing?" or they may as well say, "In conducting a special military operation," or something like that. You know. But yeah, you know, and it's honestly saddening to me. I don't really. That's one thing. That's one of the big reasons actually that I don't get into politics, because I find the entire state of affairs at this point honestly saddening. And also, if I came out with my political opinions, they wouldn't align with anyone's probably. They're not extreme or anything. They're honestly, well, I'm not even going to say what leaning they are, but they're not extreme. But they're so completely different than what a lot of people think about in the modern political sense, that it just wouldn't make a lot of sense to people. Like, I focus more so on the basic fundamentals of just making sure that things keep running here in this Western world, more so than these abstract ideals that people keep dividing themselves on for absolutely no reason. So I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one is going to go to Duncan VR, who's a channel legend who throws in a $25 donation. And Duncan is exercising his right to paid speech. He says, Bamuba. He says, Bamuba. Kermit said, Guzlik Verliken. And the marmot said, Baba. Give me a damn plum. Moo moo. Matt said, meow. Woof woof. 1800. No respect. No respect, I'm telling you. I'm telling you. He said, Baba meow. I'm lurking on your show every night. He said, even when you don't see me. Baba. He's a day 4 vet. I guess it means veteran and not a veterinarian. Meow. Pizzas. Bah.
And
he could be a veterinarian at this point, though. He knows all the animal noises by heart, and he's got me to do them. I'm telling you what. I'm telling you.
Is it veterinarian or veterinarian? Because I'm always confused. It's like library and library. You know what I mean?
If you want to be fancy, it's veterinarian.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Now I really feel like an idiot. But anyways, thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR, and helping the channel to keep running. Of course, one of our Australian viewers, but the animal noise guy. You are that guy. And you are a day 4 veteran, no doubt. And of course, Duncan VR, I thank you for the support. I thank you for believing in paid speech, and of course, helping this channel to keep on running as well. It means a lot to me, and it also is great to know that folks like you, Duncan, want to see this channel keep on running and are willing to support it to make it possible. Sunday fundraisers are incredible, and this last Sunday was like no other. $8.5 thousand raised for Razum for Ukraine. But I also have to equally thank the folks who go out of their way to make sure that they support the channel as well, because I make no pretense. This channel only runs off of viewer support. And if people did not take the choice to support this channel and help it to keep running like you do, Duncan VR, we wouldn't be able to make it possible. And of course, that's why I thank y'all so greatly for the support. But with that, thank you once again for the animal noises, and we are on to the next one.
And also, folks, I forgot to mention earlier that we actually have a new thing on our Twitter account, by the way. We have a Twitter community that we've created called the Ukraine War Newsroom. And I don't know if the Enforcer wants to show it right now or not, but you can actually go and join that. And we created it so that way y'all can share news a little bit easier with us, because I know a lot of you like to DM like news stories and news leads to us in our DMs on Twitter. And sometimes we're not able to respond to them very quickly because of the vast volume of messages we get daily. So if you want, go look for our community page. It should be on our feed on Twitter, and you can go press join on it, and then you can post in there as well. And also, we have, I think, 161 members at this point, but I'm not sure if anyone knows that they can actually go in there and post, just like we can. You have the ability to go in there and put whatever you want in there. Try to keep it as on-topic and credible as possible. And, you know, try to keep away from the interviewer interviewing the devil, because that's a very hot topic at this point. But feel free to post what you want in there so that we can try to investigate leads, and that would be a pretty cool way to interact from a Twitter standpoint.
Now, Matthew, show me really quickly here on our profile how a viewer or how I would get into the newsroom real quick.
So actually, I'm going to pin it to the top to make it easier to get to. So refresh the page, and it should be at the top of the profile here.
All right, let's check it out. And it is dead on at the top. So let's go check it out. And look at this. So here's our Ukraine War Newsroom. And you can go through here, and you can see all of the interesting things that people have been throwing in, like Colonel Jack the Ripper. Nice name.
Hey, retired.
That's it, retired. We know who you are, and I love to know that you're in the newsroom. And also, we could see the Enforcers in the newsroom. And also, by the way, quick clarification, everyone. Enforcer Matt actually, when he is with the channel, he's actually the guy who runs the Twitter. I actually have a minimal amount of involvement with the Twitter. So if you're dealing with the Enforcer over Twitter, you're actually dealing most times, 9 out of 10 times, with Enforcer Matt. I want to make that really clear, because last night some people were DMing me on Twitter, and they were like, hey, why are you saying this? And I was like, I'm not saying that. That's actually Enforcer Matt. But also, to clarify that, I completely back everything that Enforcer Matt says on Twitter. So while I'm not saying it, it may as well be me saying it, because it has my support, you know, like it has my sponsorship pretty much. So, you know, Cult of Matt's happy.
I'm not sure if people know the majority of the time that they're talking to me on Twitter or not. I think half the people actually refer to me by name when they message us on Twitter. And then the other half are just kind of like, hey, Enforcer. I'm like, I guess they know they're talking to me and not you. I don't know.
I don't know, but I want to try and make that as clear as possible because, you know, folks may not know that because it also does get confusing as well because a lot of people still don't know that I, the one talking right now, am the Enforcer and my co-host, Enforcer Matt, is Enforcer Matt. Some people still get us mixed up and call me Enforcer Matt and him the Enforcer. My real name is actually Andrew, and I'm the Enforcer, and that's the one you usually hear rambling about history and the news and everything. And then the co-host, who talks less but still is very valued when he talks because the cult of Matt is a thing, he's Enforcer Matt, and his actual name is Matthew, a lot like his Enforcer name suggests. So hopefully that clears that up a little bit.
No, my name's actually Matthias.
Don't kid people like that. You're gonna get really confused. But with that, I hope that does address that well because I always love to try and clarify things as best as possible. And with that, we are on to the next one, I think.
And our next one is going to go to Jack Ray and also Teslans. Jack Ray put in a 20 and Teslans put in a 10. And they said, good point. And Teslans said, chica chow.
Chica chow. But thank you so much for the support, Jack Ray. And thank you for saying it's a good point. Because whenever I think about decisions, big decisions, because I know when you threw that in, I got to thank you for agreeing and saying it's a good point. And also supporting the channel so that way I can keep making points like that. Because whenever I think of things like that, I always think of it as a governance issue. And a lot of people, and I've seen some people say this tonight, in channel regulars say, actually, you ban people here on the YouTube channel. If you believe in free speech, shouldn't you just allow everything to go here? There's a difference, though. We're talking on this channel about a private channel that is run inside of the confines of a private company, and neither of those entities, including the Enforcer, has to protect free speech. We can permit certain kinds of speech and ban others that we don't find acceptable here on this channel. But when we're talking about a grand view perspective, like we were talking about earlier, about whether the government should be able to come in and shut down something from happening, like this interview being published that we were talking about earlier, that's a whole different perspective. Private entities have no duty to protect your free speech. There's a clear distinction in the law in between what private entities have to do as far as free speech goes, which is literally nothing. And then there's a big difference in what public or state or federal entities have to do to regard free speech or protect free speech. And whenever I'm talking about it on this issue tonight, I'm not talking about it on a private entity's perspective, because whether YouTube wants that interview to go out is a whole other thing. In fact, they could actually ban it, and there's not really a lot I can do to complain about, because they are a private entity and they are allowed to do whatever they wish in that regard. But on a government level, that's the level that I view it at. And much like I fight to make sure that Ukraine continues to get support and that their story continues to be told, I will fight for your right to say what you want. That's why I love this world that we live in, the Western world, and that's why I continue to work tirelessly each and every day to try and work, or at least tell the story of the brave efforts of Ukraine that are fighting within the Western interests. And that's why I always am tirelessly doing this, because I believe in what the West is. I believe what we stand for, and I'm always wanting to make sure that at the end of the day, we're better off than our rivals and adversaries are, because that means that those kinds of values, the right kind of values that allow y'all to believe and say what y'all want, continue to exist at the end of the day. And so I hope that kind of articulates well why I believe in rights like that so greatly. And thank you everyone once again for supporting that. I've seen a lot of people disagree with that, but I've also seen an equal amount of people really backing that idea up and supporting it. And I got to say that is absolutely incredible to know that there are a lot of people in the Lee Spring Army who do believe in these Western values. Even if it may not be to our benefit, y'all still believe in them because it's inherent to what we are as a sphere of influence. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one. And thank you once again, Jack Ray and Teslans, for the support.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Tommy Manic, who says, please keep up the great work, guys.
And thank you so much, Tommy Manic, for the support, and we will keep up the great work. And thanks to your support, we will be able to keep it up tonight. I don't know why I stuttered at the start, but the other part was an exaggeration. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Sarah Yusei, who puts in a $6 donation. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. He says, hello, guys, and hi, LSA. And have you heard that honestly, Sir Guse, I think we've beat this topic into the ground so much. I don't think I can tolerate to hear it anymore. To be perfectly honest, I think most of the audience would agree. But I think actually you agreed with me earlier. Now that I think about it, he said, "I'm sorry for asking the question." I said, "Don't worry about it. We're going to discuss it anyway, so don't worry about it. No worries." But thank you very much for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Sir Goosey. Or Sir Gussie, I don't know how it's pronounced. Let us know. But thank you, thank you for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. And I gotta say that it is great to know that folks like you want to hear a discussion about that. I hope that you enjoyed it earlier. I would have to agree with Matty. We've beaten that into the ground, but nevertheless, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to be possible, because you've made it possible for us to be on air and talk about something like that tonight. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Opus, who puts in a 5 and says, "It's a trap."
Oh, what? Wait a minute, what? Opus, it ain't a trap. Oh, come on.
A trap, you say?
Like, Zoink Scoob, I think it's a trap. Right. But still.
A track.
Like, Zoink Scoob, I think it's a track. Raggy clip it. But nevertheless, thank you for the support, Opus, and helping the channel to keep on running, because it is a trap. And the Ukrainians put them right in it. And so with that, thank you once again. And let's see. And also, really quickly, Connect Info Sources said, "I try to put in a super chat, but every time it gets denied. Are there problems? Try and refresh your YouTube and make sure that your payment information is correct." Because I think those are really the only problems I can think of as far as that goes. And if you want to support the channel and you still can't do it through a super chat, we do have a Patreon, and there's a link in the description below to that. That's another way to support the channel. And I am telling y'all, it probably will be maybe the next week or two, and we are going to actually start putting out stuff on Patreon again. We don't exactly know what it will be. It'll probably just be an amalgamation of anything and everything we do behind the scenes, or anything interesting. But we are going to start regularly uploading stuff to Patreon for folks who are supporting us there. Maybe behind the scenes stuff, or maybe just like an interesting like side note, maybe history stuff and rabbit holes that I kind of talked about a little bit on stream, and I'll end up putting some of that stuff on Patreon, and like more in depth and fleshed out. But with that, I hope that does.
You know, we could blow up the Patreon fast if we made like the Enforcer Fight Club and we posted like the videos of that to the Patreon. We could blow that thing up quick.
Yeah, yeah, we could. Oh man,
man, the highest quality of wrestling and fighting on the you know, on this corner of the internet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you know, I actually think that'd be a great idea, Matthew. Maybe we could.
No, actually, that'd be a terrible idea. No, I'm not scrapping. I can put somebody else in there to scrap though if you want to see that.
Man, you know what? We ought to take LSA members to down and fight. You know, that would be funny. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for the support. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Donald Kunzer, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. He says, 2 people you should talk to: Peter Zahan and Konstantin Inside Russia podcast.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Donald Kunzer. And I would say I would love to talk to other YouTubers or other podcast people. But the thing is that through my experience of doing this, I have never actually had a good experience of dealing with other YouTubers. I'm actually going to be entirely honest, not a single one. A lot of YouTube, like, I hate to say this because, you know, some people always think it's always happy-go-lucky time on YouTube and everyone loves each other, but a lot of YouTubers are very two-faced on how they act on camera versus how they act off camera, and we had an experience like that with practically every YouTuber we ever dealt with. They would hardly want, like, they would love to try and get on the show. Like many, like a great many people reached out to us trying to get on this show. Even people who act like they hate us now and have always hated us actually tried to get on the show back in the past. And then we would get them on, and before the camera would go live, I would try and talk to them, like have small talk, like, "Hey man, how are you doing? You doing good? Great, thanks." And that would be it. They would not want to talk to us at all off air. But as soon as we went on air, then they would try and up us one, or try and make themselves look better, or really just be there to try and advertise themselves to y'all in the audience. And to be honest, you know, it's not anything like that I'm like really racing for, to be able to talk to guests again, because I love the idea of talking to people and making friends. Everyone who knows me in real life will back that up. I love making friends, meeting new people, and getting to talk to everyone I possibly can. But As far as YouTube goes, I've noticed that there is a trend where nobody is really like that. A lot of people are here to really try and view you as competition and try and cut you down a couple of notches, and they act like that off air. And then as soon as you go on air, then they act a completely different way. And I'm not a big fan of that. Matthew, funnily enough, Matthew was actually of that mindset from the very start. He was like, don't have guests. That is a big mistake because they're all going to view us as competition and they're all going to try and cut us down. And I was like, nah, Matthew.
Was warning.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew was right actually in the end. I have to say, like, looking back now, I was the one making the mistake because I was telling Matthew, I was like, nah, man, like, we're in the same community as these people. We're talking about the same thing. I mean, they don't seem like bad people when you watch their videos. Like, they don't seem mean. I mean, I bet they're nice people. And
it's unfortunate too, is I like to see the good in like certain people and stuff like that. But unfortunately, one of my qualities is I'm a very good BS sniffer. I can sniff it out pretty quick, and with a decent amount, not every single one of them, but most of the people we've had on as guests, they kind of came across as sort of going through that using mentality, like they were going to try to use us to get views and things like that. And to be honest with you, like I don't blame them. If they want to try to grow their channel, that's great. But in the meantime, it helps not to treat the people like trash. You're coming on to their show. That's not a good thing either. At least if you're going to get the viewership and stuff like that, and you're going to try to benefit from it, at least be polite in the process. But a good portion of them couldn't even do that.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of them couldn't. And a lot of them also would have a lot of them were incredibly arrogant because, as many of y'all know, we've done pretty good with our analysis on this channel. I don't think at this point that's a stretch to say, because we've been mentioned many places all officially now, and it looks like a lot of people enjoy what we do and think it's pretty high quality. So, very thankful for that and not letting that go to my head or anything. But now looking back, we know that our analysis was always pretty good. And then these people would come on, and I would try and talk to them a little bit off air, and every single one of them would act like it was like a fight to try and like prove that they were better at analysis than me, and I suck at it, and I'm an idiot. Like, that's like the mindset all of them would have. Like, I would say something, and they'd be like, nope, you're wrong, and here's why, and you're just wrong, it's a fact. And I'd be like, whoa, wait a minute, it's like, you don't have to act like that. Because even y'all know when I'm on air, I'll say something to y'all, like to answer a question or something. And I'll be like, but that's only what I'm thinking, and I could be wrong, because I could be wrong, and I have been wrong. But then these people would act like they are only right, and they cannot be wrong. And then all of them ended up being wrong in the future. Like, every single thing that they told me that I was wrong on, and they said it was different, they were all wrong on it. And that, like, all of that together, I'm not really a big fan of trying to get other YouTubers on. Not to diss those folks. I thank you for the support and recommending that. And I don't really know them personally. But I've been burned enough by different YouTubers to say I'm not really a big fan of dealing with any of them, in my honest opinion. Like dealing with other folks, like, say, General Petraeus wanted to be a guest and we do an interview with him and make it a YouTube video. I would absolutely love to do that. Talking to people who don't have YouTube channels and they're acting like they have, like a competitor here that they're trying to cut their throat or something like that, I'd be totally fine with talking to people who are not YouTubers. But if they are a YouTuber, I honestly, kind of don't really want much to do with them anymore. I'm very happy doing this on my own. With Enforcer Matt and me just doing this on our own and doing our thing. Because also, honestly, like, guests didn't really have a lot to add, ever either. It's like, just talking about them about stuff, it's like, stop getting down to real information or anything like that. It just is what it is. And I see some people saying, oh, I like this guest and I like that guest. We're not talking, like, there are a few exceptions in there. I think there's maybe like one exception, maybe two of them. But the majority of them were of what I'm talking about. And that's why we don't really like dealing with other YouTubers that much. And also whenever we were whenever other people were going through rough times, I would try and check on them. Like, for example, one of our guests in the past ended up getting off of our show, and then the next day they put out something on their channel about they were crying all day and they couldn't stop. So I reached out to them and was like, hey, are you okay, dude? Like, if you need to talk to someone, you can talk to me. We can talk it out and see what's wrong. And they were like, no, I'm good. And then, when we go through tough times, and we continue to sometimes have tough times with things, nobody wants to check on us, just who gives a damn, and it's like, well, it's pretty rude and uncaring, just on a personal level. But all those things combined is why we don't have a lot to do with other YouTubers, just to make that story short. But nevertheless, I do thank you for the support, and I will keep it in mind, though. While we don't do things with YouTubers, I will keep it in mind. And thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Made in Canada 182, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much for that support. They said, oh man, they're back to it again. Oh man. They said, if and when the TC/Lord of Hell interview does become available, would you guys be willing to do a react video separate from the nightly stream? I think I don't know about you, Enforcer, but I have a feeling we'll have to end up addressing some stuff said in the video, because there's going to be some things said by Putin which are probably going to be maybe discussion worthy, but I don't know. What do you think?
I'm going to watch the interview when it comes out. I can tell you all that up front. And depending on what the actual contents of the interview are, that's really going to dictate whether we talk about it at all. Because if it takes a very, and I'm honest, I'm going to be quite honest with y'all about my apprehensions on this interview. I have a very good idea that this is going to take a very heavy political leaning into the upcoming election here in the United States, and it's going to be very politically minded. And you know, who better to talk about American politics than the dictator of Russia? Who better? But beyond that, I have a feeling it's probably going to take that leaning, and if it does, it's completely stricken from us talking about it. Because I do not talk about politics, and regardless whether it's a revolutionary interview or what, I'm not going to bring that garbage onto this show. But if it is actually, if this guy actually surprises me, and he actually asks good questions, which I'm doubting, that actually put him on the hot seat, and the answers are interesting, then we probably will talk about it to some extent. But it really depends on that, because while I believe in free speech, I do have a certain standard on this channel, and politics is one thing that is well below standard. I'm never going to include that directly into the show and be like, oh yes, we support such and such side or the other side. Absolutely not. So if it takes that leaning, if it goes that direction with the video, we're not going to cover it at all. But if it goes the other direction, and like this guy, well, y'all know who it is Tucker Carlson. If he asks questions like, so why in the world do the Russians bomb civilian areas that are populated often? Why is that the case? Is that acceptable as a Russian military standard? You know, if it's questions like that, and then Putin gives an answer like, well, no, we don't, and we've never killed civilians. We always treat them with respect. Then we certainly will be talking about it, because that's not a political topic. That is more so a topic directly pertaining to the war that is a flat-out lie, which can be disproven, and we can show proof for it, literally over just this past week. So I hope that does address that well, at least on how I'm wanting to approach that, because it's really dependent on how that interview goes. But nevertheless, I got to thank you so much for the support, Made in Canada, and helping this channel to keep running. Your first super chat ever, according to YouTube. And it means a lot to me that you enjoy the channel enough and appreciate it enough that you want to see it keep running. And so with that, thank you once again. We are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to NC 8, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much for that support. And they said first super chat. However, YouTube didn't say it was your first, so I'm kind of confused if YouTube's messing up or what. But thank you very much. And they said, but don't want the lights to go dim. And have you heard anything about the Russian invisible cloak? It hides body heat at night.
I have not heard about that. I've heard about the Ukrainian one. I haven't heard about a Russian one, though. And let's see.
A Russian one?
A Russian one? Wait, did I mishear that?
I was just rereading it to make sure, but yeah, you're right.
Okay, so I haven't heard about a Russian one, to be quite honest with you. So unfortunately, I would have to declare ignorance on that, because I don't know about it. I mean, I've seen them use a thermal blanket to try and like camouflage themselves against thermal, but then they did that in broad daylight, and when they switched over to the daylight camera, they were glittering like it was a disco ball. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you for the support, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Kwai, who puts in a 5 and says, is it possible that Sox News will not publish this interview due to possible reputation damage? And Sox News ain't going to be publishing nothing because he doesn't work for them anymore, to my knowledge. I think it's going to be just on X. But Enforcer, what say you?
Yes, it will only be on X. Sox News, well, we'll just call it as it is. Fox News is not going to be showing it. CNN is not going to be showing it. None of the major mainstream news networks are going to be showing it. And like, this is something that like aggravates me so much. People are really stupid like this. I say mainstream media, and a lot of people take that to mean because it's taken a certain kind of a wordage these days, and I'm here to change that. A lot of people think that only talks about a certain kind of leaning of news companies, like CNN in particular, because they're always called the mainstream news. But what's funny about that is that by the ratings and by viewership, Fox News is something like 3 times larger than CNN by viewership, and so going off of that, clearly they are also mainstream news. They're all mainstream news. So that's why I group them all together, and I don't try and make it a political thing. It's more so just all the big news companies are all clumped together, regardless of their political affiliations. They're all called mainstream because they are. And so going off that, none of the mainstream news companies are going to be showing this. This is going to be entirely on X. And so, you know, if you want to see it, it's probably going to be over there. And so with that, I hope that does address it well. And also, really quickly, I would say this for a minute, because if y'all want to see something interesting, this is going to be interesting no matter how it goes. I would watch it, because I'm going to have to watch it, because it really pertains to our sphere, and I have to see if it's even something we have to cover. But I would recommend y'all watch it, because it'll give y'all a pretty good perspective of, you know, of either is this guy going to be a real journalist for once, which I highly doubt, or what are the pro-Russians shooting for these days? Like, what, like, when you think about it, this is going to be the best insight ever into what the FSB is trying to push publicly as a propaganda ordeal, if it goes that way, and the questions are leading statements and stuff leading to certain answers. It is going to be y'all's best insight, and my best insight ever, if it goes that direction, to what Russian propaganda is looking like, or what it may form into at this point. So I'd highly recommend watching it, because it's probably going to be really insightful. Even if it is anti-Ukrainian and pro-Russian, it's going to be very interesting to watch and see what comes out of this. Because many of y'all, because y'all been watching this for 2 years, y'all know everything, because y'all have seen me cover everything. Y'all be able to sit there and listen to this crap, and y'all go, yep, there's that propaganda statement that was said by Slava, and here's another one that was said by Slava, and here's one that was pushed out by the Russian Ministry of Defense itself, and here's another one that's a lie, and here's another state. Like, y'all will be able to go through and pick it apart. Y'all will know that it's lies, but it'll be very interesting to see what kind of lies may be said. So, you know, with that, I hope that does address that well, because I would, like, even if we can't cover it, I think it would be interesting for y'all to have some takes on what was said. Of course, if it's political, we can't touch it at all, and I'd have to ask that y'all don't bring that in here into the chat and start, you know, espousing political beliefs. But beyond that, it will be, regardless, interesting to see. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Heather Fitzgibbon, LSA, who throws in a $10 super chat and throws in a Shiba Inu saying thank you. I like that Shiba Inu very much. And thank you very much, Heather, for supporting the channel and helping to keep us running. And with that being said, we're moving on to our next super chat, which goes to Carl, who puts in a 5 and says, a good show, you guys, and I appreciate all the work.
And thank you so much, Carl, for appreciating all the work we put in and appreciating us. I try and be as sincere as possible. I hope it comes off well on screen. And I gotta thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running, Carl, because it is folks like you who make our work possible. So thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Daniel James Gardner, who puts in a 5 and says, this is the first super chat, and YouTube said that too, so I believe you. He said, but I've been watching from day one, and you guys are great, and you will too be prez, and you will do right for you, for us. And if you guys come to Canada, visit me.
And thank you so much for the support, Daniel James Gardner, first super chat ever, and you have been around forever. And thank you so much for saying, yeah, I'll be president. Both of us can't be president. I don't think Matthew has any ambition to even go a political route. But I will, and also, Matthew, I want to make sure I'm correct on that. I am correct in saying that, right?
Well, we'll have to wait and see.
We'll wait and see. But nevertheless, I got to thank you so much for saying that we'll both be president. And hopefully we will do right for the country. Because a lot of people these days are falling under mainstream mindsets where one side has to quash the other and shut them down. I'm more into the mindset, and you know, this is why I don't think my mindset hardly agrees with anyone. This is why I'm very easily able not to talk about it, is that I believe more so in just ensuring the fundamentals of the country, making sure that everyone can get to work, everyone has a well-paying job, the country's doing well, and not only that, the basic rights of the United States are protected. People can say whatever they want, wherever they want, as long as it's not like a, you know, like a threat to national security or anything, because there are a few things that can do that. But I think that that is certainly a good route for a president to take. I do not want to tell y'all what to think or what to say as president of the United States. All I want is to see you prosper. That's my entire goal of trying to get into politics and eventually become the president. I just want to be, I do not want to be known as that president that started shutting down rights. I don't want to be known as like John Quincy Adams, who brought forward the Alien and Sedition Act and tried to ruin free speech. I don't want to be that guy. I want to be that guy where people go, he respected the rights of everyone, and he made the nation better, and he made the citizenry better at the end of the day. That's something that I would certainly say that's what a president should strive to be. Should not strive to be someone who leans one way or the other way. He should be largely understanding and respectful of both sides, and make sure to try and do what will get them both better off by the end of his term, or the end of both of his terms. And so with that, I hope y'all agree with that. And thank you all once again for being a part of the LSA. If y'all agree with my idea of what a president should be, put an LSA in the chat, because I don't think anyone can disagree with that kind of a mindset right there. But with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
And the next one goes to Trister1, who puts in a 5. It says, Corgi love, and take a question from that chat.
Hey, Corgi love. I love the Corgis. The Corgis are doing good, by the way, these days. And thank you so much for throwing in some Corgi love, and we will take one from the chat. And so what do we got, Matthew?
And the one from the chat goes to John B. Rempel, who says, Matt, how critical is the supply of 155mm artillery shells? And keep up the good work.
It's vital, actually. A great question. It's a very vital thing for the Ukrainians to continue to receive is heavy artillery shells. Heavy artillery is really tough to produce in large numbers. Even countries like the United States are kind of struggling to keep up with our stock replenishment requirements without going into a war economy. So it's very important to keep Ukraine continuously supplied with those. Artillery is the biggest winner of war, even in the modern day, especially in the war in Ukraine. And so the provision of 155mm artillery shells amongst all the other kinds of artillery is crucially important. And I hope that does address that well. And thank you for sponsoring that live chat, Trister. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And shout out to Robert Johnson, who puts in a 5 and says, Slava Ukraini. And also Wyatt Logan, who also puts in a 2 and does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Robert and Wyatt, for that support and helping to keep the channel running. And we also have a 5 from Scott Jensen yet again. He says, Enforcer, I know you couldn't respond to my chat, but thank you, and I agree with the response.
And I got to thank you for the support. I got to thank all of you also for the support and helping this channel to keep running, because every little bit counts. And of course, I got to say this again. It's because some people throw in comments, and I always think of these comments where they're like, I threw in a 5, but I wish I could throw in more. I thank all of y'all so much. Honestly, overthink y'all. And I know I do, because everyone's always like, man, why does he go on so long? I go on so long because I know that to some of y'all, that $5 super chat is the equivalent of a $500 super chat for other viewers on this channel. And it just blows me away. It astonishes me every single night that people find the channel worthwhile to support. And that's why I always go through great lengths to thank each of y'all personally, even if it is just a $1 super chat versus a $500 super chat. I usually try and spend an equal time thanking y'all, because your $1 super chat is probably the equivalent to a $500 for someone else. And it means a lot to me that you found the channel worthwhile to support, whether it be with everything you got or just a little bit of what you got. It means a lot to me. And I got to thank you for that. And so with that, thank you to all of y'all once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And up next, I'm going to go out of order just a little bit, so that way I can pronounce our valued viewer's name well. Papu, I believe it's how it's said. Papu puts in a 2, and he says, hi everyone and a heart to Ukraine in Canada. Welcome here.
And hey, and thank you so much for the support, Papu, and also hello, and a huge heart to Ukraine, and in Canada, everyone's welcome there, and I'd have to say, great to hear, and I got to thank you for the support and helping the channel to keep on running too. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And we have another 5 from Scott Jensen, and he says, let's see, this one here, Scott, I'm telling you what, that one is scaring me very much, and sadly I can't read that one because We can't discuss citrus on this stream. Citrus has gotten very, very political, especially oranges.
Citrus
Not the
is
grapefruit, just the oranges.
Citrus has always been very political, much like the other one is also very political as well. Also, really quickly, the only way I'll speak about, and I'll try and make this clear because I'm trying to make the political rules a little bit more clear on this channel. If any actions are taken by the office of the President of the United States, whoever the sitting president is, I'm going to recognize them as the sitting president, whether you agree with that or not, whether you like them or not, because they are the sitting president. They are in charge of the entire executive branch of the government. So it would make a lot of sense to sit there and go, actually, there is no president, because I've seen stupid people every single time an elections come around. They go, oh, wait a minute, the election isn't a legitimate one because they didn't shoot a cannon off or something when he was getting inaugurated. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? It's like, he's the president, you idiot. Then that's like with the past 4 elections at least that I've seen that just growing up. I'm like, what the hell do you mean? He is the president. That person is the president, whether you like him or not. But
he's gonna pick the sitting president when he could have the standing one.
Honestly, I would rather be a standing president than a sitting president.
Exactly.
It seems more more of a leader type role to be standing more so than sitting. Sitting is more of a passive thing. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address it well. Sadly, I cannot address that super chat. I can't even really talk about it much at all because it would be political, regardless how I try to address it. But still, thank you for the support and help this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a 2 and says, LSA, hit the like button. That's an order.
And LSA, and do hit that like button. We've gotten up to 2,200 likes. One hell of a like number. And I got to thank everyone. I got to thank everyone for hitting that like. It means a lot to us. It makes us happy, it makes us smile, and it makes this channel worthwhile. And so thank you so much for that. Because, by the way, so many people hit the dislike button tonight. We are down to 95% like rate, which is actually really low for this channel. So if y'all want, continue to hit the like button and spite the bots and spite the haters. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Robert Lemieux, who puts in a 2 and says he will only ask Putin-approved questions.
Yes. That's something that we both are kind of talking about behind the scenes. We think it's probably only going to be approved questions because, I'm not expecting a lot. I mean, you don't get to go interview Putin without following some kind of a guideline. That's one thing that's guaranteed for the most part. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And jumping into our live chats for the night, up first we have our Morse code of the stream. Tonight we had Clove Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Banu, Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Rumpelstiltskin, Toxic Bananas, Tightline LSO, and David Millsaps, the whole roster. Tonight's Morse code reads, they are learning the hard way in Avdiivka now. Long live our LSA. Slava Ukraine, Slava USA, Slava LSA.
That's the sound of money. And y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. And I gotta say, really impressive to hear that y'all got it right. The Russians are learning a lesson in Avdiivka, that's for sure. I'm starting to get flashbacks of last year when it was Bakhmut. But nevertheless, I gotta thank all y'all once again for getting that correct. Y'all been getting that correct for 713 days of the war. And I'm gonna blow y'all away. Day 730 is going to be the 2nd anniversary of the beginning of the war. And that is crazy to think about because it's only 17 days away or so. And so, with that, really quickly, Matthew actually just sent me something over the phone. Something that really piqued my interest, and I have to address it here on stream. Matthew just sent me some absolute gas. And I think y'all might know what it is. I'm waiting to see if the live chat's going to pick up on it, Matthew, while I type it in. Don't say anything. Don't say anything. We gotta make it a surprise, man. We gotta make it a surprise. So what do y'all think it's going to be? What do you think? What do you think, fellas? Oh, wait a minute. I see someone might be guessing it. Oh, wait a minute. Just wait. I can't breathe. It is freaking Marmot. It's Marmot time, baby.
Hello there. Hello there.
Would you like a plan?
Would you like some rock?
Would you like some rock?
Could I have a plum, good sir?
Where are you from, Marmot? East Gloucestershire. But nevertheless, it's a freaking Marmot. Oh, man. Dude, we haven't had a...
Could I have a tea and a crumpet?
Man, we haven't had a Marmot for like 3 days, I think.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute, but it is Marmot time tonight, folks. We got him on air. It is a freaking Marmot, and we love him. It is a precious thing. And by the way, Matthew, I've been talking behind the scenes with one of our incredible viewers. I'm not going to mention their name directly on air. Well, actually, I bet they like it. Nutters HD, who you know, Matthew, because we both talked to him a good bit on the Discord. But he's actually been working on patches, and if in the future, we may possibly be able to send out patches in our maybe upcoming merch store, because we're going to be redoing it a lot and, really figuring out how to do it from here forward. But
I've always wanted some patches.
Yeah, I always want some patches, so that way I could get some. So that way I can get some
matches.
Yeah, so that way I can get some matches, so I can light up those. Okay, well, I guess we both went silent right there. I was waiting for you to fill in the blank.
The next thing was a cuss word. I don't know if you want me to say that.
Just so we get some matches, so we can light up. I can't say that. I can't say that. I was going to do it, but I can't. But nevertheless, we might be able to actually send out patches. And also, Blue Flam 777 LSA said, LSA flag? Okay, so I'm going to let y'all in on a little secret. So, believe it or not, we've actually never had an LSA day on the channel. The LSA is going to be turning 2 years old about 28 days after the start of, after the second anniversary of the war in Ukraine. Around 28 days later or so, the LSA will be turning 2 years old, because that's officially the day that it came into being. We've never had an LSA day on the channel before, but I'd like to make that a thing where we get to celebrate the second year of the Lee Spring Army existing on the internet. And as a part of that, I'm wanting to roll out actual symbols that y'all can identify with. There's another community out there, and crazily enough, while it seems like they have a massive presence on the internet, they're actually the same size as we are. And it really seems like they have a massive presence because they have a lot of symbols and symbology that goes with them. And so what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to finally roll out the Lee Spring Army flag, some symbols for the Lee Spring Army, and also... we also want to start rolling out like specific emblems and patches and stuff for different nations in the Lee Spring Army. We're of course going to try and start off, at least I am, with the big ones. Most importantly, the United States makes up half of our viewership, so it's going to be the biggest core in the Lee Spring Army. And then we're going to move on to the other ones. Canada will be second, Britain will be third, Australia will be fourth, Germany will be fifth. Because we actually have a lot of German viewers. And then we'll start working on every other country by priority. It's going to go down the list from the largest community of viewers by nation down to the smallest. So we'll eventually come up with a symbol for every single nation that watches. So that would be really cool. The flag will be universal, though. We're not going to have a different flag for each country. It's just going to be one flag, one Lee Spring Army. And so that way y'all can have it as banners on your Twitter profiles. You can have it as your YouTube profile pictures. You can have it everywhere. And I think that's going to be really cool, because finally, for the first time ever, beyond just having LSA in someone's name, there's going to be a really good way to identify who's Lee Spring Army. And I think that would be absolutely cool. So... with that, also, by the way, really quickly, I have to say this. While it will be a Lee Spring Army flag, I have to spoiler alert, there's probably going to be no Lee Springs in the flag. There probably will be LSA. It'll probably say LSA on it, but probably no Lee Springs, because I'm wanting to make the Lee Spring Army something very classy looking. I'm wanting to actually make it something that may be timeless. The actual abbreviation LSA may actually change over time, and the name of the Lee Spring Army may actually change over time, like over years. But the idea will stay the same, and the symbols will stay the same. Not saying that I'm not trying to spoil the future and say that it may actually be a small chance at a political party, but you never know. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you everyone once again for the support, and wanting to see some merch and everything. And with that, I hope I addressed that well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have two more super chats. This one goes to Governor Ivy, who puts in a 5 and says 12 plus 144 plus 20 plus 3 times the square root of 4 divided by 7 plus 5 times 11 equals 9 squared plus 0. A dozen, a gross, and a score. And plus 3 times the square root of 4 divided by 7 plus 5 times 11 is 9 squared, and not a bit more.
Governor Ivy did
I
that
have to
just
tell
to
you what.
flex on me.
I tell you what, Governor Ivy, you live in Alabama as well, and both you and me know that Alabama did not teach us how to do that type of math. So you must have copied and pasted that from Google, like I would have. But Enforcer, what say you?
Well, I gotta thank you for the support, Governor Ivy, but you just flexed on me because I suck at math. I'm terrible at it. But still, thank you for the support and showing us you could do math, which is something many Alabamians like myself could never do. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And huge shout out to Peter. And Peter, your last name is definitely something I'm not going to have a hard time pronouncing, but I'm going to give it a go. Savan Sarek, who puts in a €10 donation, and thank you very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much, Peter. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce your last name. Matthew was brave doing that, but I gotta thank you for the support and helping this channel keep on running. If you want to help us to try and pronounce your name, and you want to help us out with that in the live chat, feel more than happy to do that because we would love to be able to know how to pronounce your last name. But beyond that, thank you for throwing in your first super chat ever to the channel, and thank you for being one of our viewers from Europe. I hope you can't wait. I hope you're actually based off of your last name. I'm going to take a guess here. You're either Polish or Czech. And I might be wrong with that, so please don't get offended if I'm wrong. I'm just taking an educated guess there. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel keep on running, and I bet you're looking forward to us rolling out the European LSA emblems, because I will be looking forward to that massively. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And thank you for putting in your first super chat ever. And with that, really quickly, Matthew, I want to make sure to read this one off because this is an educational moment for you and me, because I just typed this in to make sure I was getting this right. Tagi Abiri threw in a 10 Swiss franc super chat.
Okay.
So they're from Switzerland.
I knew that, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was wondering what was so new about that.
Dude, I thought I saw that and I've never remembered CHF being in the chat as a super chat. So I was like, what is that? So I had to Google it and I was like, oh, Swiss francs. It's a Swiss viewer. But nevertheless,
Swiss francs, the best francs.
Man, frankly, but anyways,
man, you know who knows about Swiss francs more than anybody would be the hot dog salesman. He'll know about the Swiss francs, the American francs. He's going international with the francs.
Dude, oh my lord, dude. You know when Frank he knows about?
What?
Frank down at the bus station. Oh!
Oh dear. Oh dear.
Oh man.
Oh goodness.
And he ain't selling them to him, he's buying it from him. You know what I mean? Oh man. Oh my lord. Oh man. But anyways, man, I guess you could say he doesn't have that. Well, actually, he does have that dog in him, but it's not. It's not that normal kind of.
No.
Oh man. Oh, that's funny. It's a classic, a real classic, Matthew. You know what I mean. But anyways, with that, I thank you so much once again for support Tagi Abiri and helping the channel to keep on running. Because folks like you make it possible. And thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Eldad Sarek, who puts in a 5 and says, "You rock." Now take a live chat question. And we shall, Eldad. And thank you very much for that support and helping to keep the channel running. And you're going to move us right into our live chat segment. And our first one's going to go to Malcolm Taylor, who says, "Is there any news on the F-16s at this point?"
Sadly, there isn't really a lot of additional news about F-16s that I've seen. And maybe I think we may have had something about that on our Twitter. Let me go check that, double check it, just to make sure that we didn't have any news about it today. Because if we did, I looked over it really quickly. No, I'm actually not seeing anything. So sadly, we don't have any updates on the F-16s at the moment. They're still somewhere out there in La La Land. So I hate to say that, but that's what we know at the moment. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Jess Sackett, who says, "What do you think about Ukrainian special forces taking out Wagner forces in Sudan?"
I think that's honestly weird. But still, I guess that's a part of the conflict in an extent. It's kind of weird to think that the Russians and the Ukrainians are kind of fighting a proxy war in Sudan. But you know, if that's where Ukraine can get at some Russians, I guess that's where they can get at them. You know, I can't really blame them a lot. They were doing fairly good back when I was hearing news about that. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Mark Walsh, who says, "Is the UAF using drones to drop counter-propaganda truth leaflets in Russian cities?"
I haven't heard about that. I haven't heard about them dropping leaflets in the cities. Usually we see them dropping bombs in the city. It's dropping them bombs in the cities. And those seem to be a lot more effective at turning the Russian public away from Russia and towards Ukraine, because the propaganda is not really working out that well for the folks on the border area with Ukraine. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
Hey, and I got Eldad Sarek's name correct. At least I got one right for the night, considering I butchered pretty much every other one. So, Eldad, you're probably the luckiest viewer on the stream at this point. But anyways, moving on to our next live chat. This one goes to ASAP Master, who says, if Ukraine wins the war, would you ever consider visiting when peace comes back?
It's not if Ukraine wins the war. I think it's a question of when Ukraine wins the war. Because while I think the percentage chance that a draw is increasing, I don't think they're ever going to lose the war. So when they win the war, I will go over there. Because at that point, I won't feel that bad going over there. I feel bad going over there because I would join the rest. And I don't mean to be so opinionated here, but I feel like I'd be joining the rest of the clowns that sit around drinking and boozing and then going and watching a couple bake cookies and then acting like I'm doing something for Ukraine through doing that, and just absolutely being a waste of space and doing nothing to really help them out. So that's why I don't want to go over there right now. I want to wait until the war is over, so that way when I go over there, instead of going over there and having hundreds of people die so that way I can go and sit in a bar and drink or something, I'll actually be over there when it's over and getting to, say, oh, hopefully y'all are hanging in here well, if there's anything we can do, let us know, that kind of stuff. I feel like that would be a better way to go over there than right now going, I'm a war supporter, I can do whatever I want, let me go get drunk and sloshed and have fun and literally do nothing near the front lines. The closest I'll get is 20 miles away, and even then I won't get involved. Like listen, y'all, I have no problem with people wanting to do war news in the country that's at war, but if you're going to go there, you gotta go suit up and actually go to the front lines. You gotta be there, on the front, where the artillery is falling and the bullets are whizzing over your head, like United 24 did. That's real news. That's real war reporting. If you're going to go over there into Ukraine, that's what you should be doing. If you're not going to do that, which we are not, I'm going to be very clear, I'm not going to do that, then I would not go into Ukraine. That's my honest take, because beyond that, I'd just be wasting space and doing absolutely nothing over there than trying to feel good and virtue signal to all of y'all, which feels really scummy. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you once again for the support. Thank you once again for the support. Why am I saying that? It was a live chat. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to George Ferguson, who says, do you think that the Russians are running out of visible or viable tanks, and will their offense change because of that?
It looks like they may be running out of viable tanks, because we're starting to notice that they're pulling more and more T-55s out of storage now, and they're actually getting destroyed on the front because they're mobile. They're moving. They're actually using them. So that sounds stupid for me to say they're mobile and moving. Duh, it's a tank that's mobile and moving. But that's what's shocking about it. They're not being used as static emplacements like we kind of saw a little bit earlier in the war. They're actually being used as tanks, which is shocking. So going off of that, I would say yes, they're starting to run low on tanks, but we're also starting to see more T-90Ms. So it looks like there's a massive disparity of tanks that are in the middle. Like T-72s and T-80s are practically gone at this point. It's either T-62s and T-55s, which are ancient at this point, or it's a T-90M, which is as advanced as Russian tanks can get. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And we have a super chat this time from Hoodoo, Texas, who puts in a 5 and says, without U.S. aid, where will Ukraine get reloads for Patriots when the reserve stock runs low?
They could get Patriot restocks from Germany, I believe the United Kingdom possibly, and Poland. I think those are some of the countries in Europe that have Patriots, so it's possible for them to get restocks that way. But if those are not viable options, then there is no way for them to get Patriot restocks. I hate that would be the answer. And hopefully so, things in America will change. And people will see that it is important for the Western world to continue to support Ukraine, because it's within our inherent interest to do so. I'm not here... I want this to be very clear. Let me be clear. And then I turn transparent. But let me be clear. I do not support the Russians or the Chinese. I actually loathe them greatly, both of them. I'm here for America and for the Western world. Not to put America over everyone in the Western world. I'm here for America and everyone else that's our friends. Everyone in Europe, in North America, and in the Pacific, really in the rest of Asia, and also Oceania, which consists of Australia and New Zealand. I'm here for them. And so I do not want to be friends with the Russians or the Chinese at all. And you know, I don't want to ever think of a world where we're friends with them, because they clearly don't want to be friends with us. They only want to be friends with us when it's to our detriment. So going off of that, I think it's important for everyone here in the West to see that Russia and China are not our friends, and they never will be our friends. They are inherently our rivals because of the positions they are in the world, and we should be constantly working to put them in far worse positions and have them worse off and have us better off. And part of that is continue to support Ukraine so that we can let Ukraine obliterate the Russians for us without us even having to lift a finger. And so with that, hope that does address that well. And I thank you so much once again for support, Houthi Texas. And thank you once again for helping the channel to keep running. And also, Houthi Texas, I got to say this as well. You have not asked, and I remember you used to ask for this so often, for the Battleship Texas update. And let's see, the Battleship Texas was like somewhere around here. It was somewhere around here, I swear, because I remember we looked at this and it was at the San Jacinto park. Wait a minute, is it down here somewhere? I feel like it's in a dry dock down here. Yeah, there it is. There's USS Texas right there. You used to ask for USS Texas updates. We haven't gotten one of those in so long, but I remember doing them back in the day. I remember I actually really liked them. They were really fun. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again for support, Houthi Texas. Just wanted to pull up something to remind us all of really old times, because I think those were like in the first 200 days of the war. But still, with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and this appears to be our last question of the night. So, Enforcer, would you like to do the whole thing?
Yes, I will. I would be more than happy to. And so, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one goes to Anonymouse, who says, hackers were able to download the specs and design of the Iranian drone they sell to Russia, and how can Ukraine make use of this info?
They could probably make uses of it by trying to figure out what frequency the drone is being operated at and intercept them. You know, if that's something that is a fixed variable, which it probably isn't. They could also try and figure out weak points, blind spots, maybe try and detect it better. There's a lot that they could do with that information, but I don't think the Ukrainians are going to try and reverse engineer them, because the Ukrainians have really effective drones of their own already. So I have a feeling they're probably going to use those plans to possibly seek weaknesses, but at the same time, they've also shot down enough of these things intact at this point. They probably already knew everything about them. So there may not be a lot for them to reap from that information, but if there was, they'll probably look for inherent weaknesses in the design. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And believe it or not, y'all, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. And I've got to say, I am more than honored to know that I was able to cover the news for each and every single one of y'all tonight. It's a complete honor that we get on here and talk to all of y'all. It means a lot to me because I don't look at y'all as numbers, I look at y'all as viewers. We've got to know so many of y'all personally, like y'all are in the chat right now, and it is wonderful to know that y'all are all here with us tonight as we cover the war again. I'm greatly appreciative of y'all. I thank you all so much once again for watching. If y'all want to hit the like button and subscribe, it makes us even happier when people do that. And also, I already got to thank y'all for giving almost 3 hours of y'all's time each to listen to us talk about the news and then get to talk to all of y'all. And so with that, I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. Good night, good luck, stay safe, take care, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And good night, folks. We'll see you all tomorrow. Once again, thank you all for a great stream. And, of course, Slava Ukraine, Hiram Slava, and good night.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.